After 10 years of our marriage, my beloved husband was tragically killed in an accident, leaving me and our 5-year-old daughter behind. Still in a daze, I somehow managed to get through his funeral, and that night I returned home. If I don't stay strong, who will protect Emma? I told myself this, trying to muster some strength. Even though I had no appetite, I knew I had to feed Emma something for dinner. Hey, Emma, what would you like for dinner? When I turned around to ask, I saw her standing by the window staring outside. Emma, what are you doing? Then she pointed outside and said something that took my breath away.
Is that Daddy?
I didn't expect a 5-year-old to fully understand this situation. Maybe Emma still believed that her dad would come home someday. Feeling a deep ache in my chest from her innocent words, I looked out through the gap in the curtains. Of course, no one was there. Daddy isn't coming back anymore, sweetie. Why did I have to say such a thing to my daughter? My heart felt like it was being crushed by an invisible hand, ready to burst. Emma continued to gaze outside, clearly not understanding. At that moment, a thought crossed my mind. Could Emma be seeing a spirit? But I quickly dismissed the idea, and, unsettled by the eerie thought, I went around the house, double-checking all the locks. Thankfully, everything was locked. If it were just a spirit, that would almost be a relief. As I thought about this, Emma came over and hugged me. I couldn't see her face, but I'm sure she was crying. I'm Natalie Carter. Carter's Flower Shop is a small florist that I run with my husband, James.
Hey, Natalie, can you help this customer?
Got it, I'm on my way. We're fortunate to stay fairly busy every day, and considering the size of our shop, I think we're doing pretty well. Originally, we both had different jobs, but after a certain event, we decided to open a flower shop, which had always been my dream. Now, we happily manage it together. That event was the birth of our daughter. Her name is Emma. We didn't have children right away after getting married, and it wasn't until about 5 years later that we were blessed with Emma. Our previous jobs had long hours, and it was hard to find time for Emma, so after a lot of thought, we decided to start this flower shop. James, with his experience in sales from his previous job, has built a great reputation with our customers. Not only that, but he's also really skilled at using all kinds of sales techniques to boost our revenue. On top of that, his old colleagues and juniors from his previous job frequently come by to buy flowers, and every time, I can't help but feel incredibly fortunate. Our 5-year-old daughter, Emma, also says she loves flowers, likely because she's grown up surrounded by them. James and I have a great relationship, and while it might sound strange to say, people often call us a model couple.
These flowers are beautiful. Thanks for picking them out.
I'm so glad you like them.
Well, I'll be back again.
We'll be waiting for you. Thank you. What could I possibly complain about? I'm at the peak of happiness right now. What kind of person will Emma grow up to be? When it comes to thinking about her future, that's about the only thing on my mind. Our family has a set routine. Every morning, the three of us leave the house together, drop Emma off at daycare, and then James and I head to the flower market. We always arrive at the market later than usual, but we've made peace with it for Emma's sake. However, this morning I wasn't feeling well. When I checked my temperature, I had a high fever of over 101 Fahrenheit. Sorry, James. I think I caught a cold.
Wow, your face is flushed. Don't worry, leave today to me and just get some rest.
I'm sorry.
You don't need to apologize. It's not like you wanted to get sick. All right, Emma, it's just you and me today.
Okay. But is Mom going to be alright?
I'll be fine. I'm going to get better today, I promise. I managed to get through the household chores before they left, but that was all I could handle. My body felt as heavy as lead, and with every step, pain shot through my joints. Maybe my fever was still rising. Before I knew it, it was time for the two of them to leave, and for the first time, I saw them off from home.
All right, we're heading out now. Make sure you get some rest.
Mom, take care.
Their kindness hit me hard. Yeah, thanks. Have a good day, you two.
See you later.
The front door quietly closed. As I watched them leave, I collapsed on the spot. With my vision swimming from the high fever, I somehow made my way to the living room. And there, I collapsed onto the sofa, falling into what felt like unconsciousness. I don't know how much time passed. I was woken by the blaring ringtone of my phone. In my dazed state, I fumbled to find where the sound was coming from. Finally grasping the phone, I answered without even checking who was calling. Hello? On the other end of the line was a man's voice I didn't recognize.
Hello, is this Natalie?
Yes. It was all I could manage to say, with no grasp of the situation in that moment. I hadn't even begun to feel the dread of what was about to be said.
This is the emergency services. Please stay calm. James has been hit by a car.
Hit by a car? The meaning of those words slowly started to sink in.
He's being taken to the nearest hospital right now. Can you come?
James had been hit by a car and was being rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. I understand. As the reality finally dawned on me, I responded immediately, forgetting entirely about how sick I was. By the time I arrived at the hospital, James was already gone. From what I was told, he had dropped Emma off at her daycare and was on his way to the flower market when a truck, whose driver had been distracted, hit him. They said he didn't suffer much, and that was a small mercy. Maybe it was my fever, but I listened to everything in a daze. It felt like it was all just a terrible dream. When I was a child, I used to have nightmares whenever I had a high fever. Later, I found out that many people had similar experiences, and I just accepted that it was something normal. I thought this was just another one of those bad dreams. But this time, it felt strangely vivid and unbearably long. Maybe, deep down, I already knew the truth, but I couldn't bring myself to accept it. I simply sat there, staring blankly as different adults came and went, saying things I couldn't fully process. I didn't cry. The nightmare continued. We had his funeral, and I carried out my duties in a mechanical way. I signed the documents they gave me and probably answered questions without thinking. Many people came to pay their respects. Customers from our flower shop, regulars, and even people from James's old workplace came by, casting sympathetic glances my way. What a long dream this is. Yet, in the middle of this nightmare, there was one thing that made me feel pain. It was the small right hand of Emma, clutching tightly to my left hand. Her grip was so strong, it felt like it might make a creaking sound. and I could clearly feel the pain in my left hand. I began to think that maybe this wasn't a dream after all, or maybe someone was trying to wake me up from this nightmare. Then, as the lid of the coffin was being closed, it happened.
Daddy,
Emma, still holding my hand tightly, suddenly burst into tears, crying out loudly. When I heard her, I finally understood in my heart. It really wasn't a dream. How I wished it had all been just a nightmare. At that moment, something inside me that had barely been holding on snapped quietly without a sound. James. James would never come back again. There was nothing left to hold back my emotions. I hugged Emma, who was sobbing beside me, and together we cried. We cried like we never had before, like we were crying for a lifetime. From now on, no matter what happens, I'm the only one who can protect Emma. It's not like we don't have relatives we could rely on, but I can't live my life depending on them. Whatever it takes, I will protect Emma. I made that firm promise to myself as I returned home at 7 p.m. The sky was already dark, and the cloudy weather felt like a reflection of my heart. As if things weren't lonely enough, the moment I stepped into our quiet house, where James, the heart and soul of our home, was no longer, the air felt even heavier. It hit me again, just how much he was really gone. Then I remembered. If I don't stay strong, who will protect Emma? I told myself this, trying to muster some strength. Even though I had no appetite, I knew I had to feed Emma something for dinner. Hey Emma, what would you like for dinner? When I turned around to ask, I saw her standing by the window, staring outside. Emma, what are you doing? Then she pointed outside and said something that took my breath away.
is that Daddy?
I didn't expect a 5-year-old to fully understand the situation. Maybe Emma still believed that her dad would come home someday. Feeling a deep ache in my chest from her innocent words, I looked out through the gap in the curtains. Of course, no one was there. Daddy isn't coming back anymore, sweetie. Why did I have to say such a thing to my daughter? My heart felt like it was being crushed by an invisible hand, ready to burst. Emma continued to gaze outside, clearly not understanding. At that moment, a thought crossed my mind. Could Emma be seeing a spirit? But I quickly dismissed the idea, and unsettled by the eerie thought, I went around the houses, double-checking all the locks. Thankfully, everything was locked. If it were just a spirit, that would almost be a relief. As I thought about this, Emma came over and hugged me. I couldn't see her face, but I'm sure she was crying. However, even after some time passed, Emma kept saying, "Daddy is here." On a weekday, on our way home from daycare. On weekends, while shopping at the grocery store. No matter where we were, Emma would repeatedly ask, "Is that Daddy?" Of course, it couldn't be. Unless she was somehow seeing a spirit. Sometimes I felt the urge to snap at her for saying it so often, but I couldn't. Emma was carrying the grief of losing her father at such a young age. Each time, I suppressed my feelings and gently said, "No, it's not." But deep down, I wished it could be true. Then one day, when I went to pick up Emma from daycare, one of the daycare teachers approached me and, looking apologetic, whispered to me,
Well, is Emma doing all right?
At first, I didn't understand what she meant, but then I realized.
She doesn't say it often, but every now and then she says, "Daddy is here. I know about James, but..."
Well, she sometimes says that with me too. I always tell her it's not true, but I didn't realize she was saying it here as well.
But here's the thing. It's strange.
What do you mean?
We've been told to be extra careful about strangers and to keep an eye on the outside, just in case. So the notice was given to me.
Then she looked even more apologetic before asking me a question.
Does James have any siblings?
No, he doesn't. Why?
There's someone who looks very much like him. It's not just me who has seen him. Other teachers have noticed, too. We wondered if he might have a twin.
I felt a chill run down my spine. James doesn't have any siblings. I've never heard of anything like that. Why was someone who looked like him showing up? Maybe Emma wasn't imagining things. Maybe she really saw someone who looked like her dad. The thought made me shiver. If you see that person again, please call the police immediately. From that day, we limited our outings as much as possible, and I decided to extend the flower shop's closure for a while. One Sunday, a few days later, my phone rang loudly. Given what had happened recently, I was on edge and my shoulder tensed at the sound. Nervously, I glanced at the screen and saw the name Mark displayed. Mark was one of James's former colleagues, someone he was very close to, and I knew him as well. Seeing his name immediately made me feel more at ease, and I quickly pressed the answer button. Hello.
Hi, this is Mark. Is this Natalie?
His voice, gentle yet firm, offered me a small sense of comfort. Yes, it's been a while. What's going on?
Well, I know it's a bit late, but I just heard about James. I'm really sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
I was wondering if it would be all right to come by and bring some flowers for him today?
For a moment, I hesitated. There was nothing wrong with him coming over now, but I couldn't completely rule out the possibility that Mark might be the suspicious person. However, I quickly shook off that thought. Mark didn't resemble James at all, neither in build nor in demeanor. Even if Mark had been lingering around us, no one would have mistaken him for James. Yes, that's fine. We'll be waiting. A few hours later, Mark arrived at our house and began to speak quietly.
I was on a business trip overseas until just yesterday. I only found out about James passing yesterday.
I see. I don't remember anything clearly about James's funeral. So it was only when I heard Mark's story that I realized he hadn't been at the funeral. This way, please. I led Mark to James's portrait, where he placed the flowers, tears welling up in his eyes. At first, Emma was cautious around Mark, but seeing him like that, she slowly came out from behind me. Mark then began to talk about how much James cherished us, how much he loved us, how proud he was of us. Just hearing those words made me cry, even though Mark was sitting right there. By my side, comforting me, was Emma. As we continued our conversation, the sky outside turned orange with the sunset, and before I knew it, the clock had passed 5 p.m. Suddenly, as if he had remembered something, Mark spoke up.
By the way, has anything strange happened recently?
I thought for a moment. It immediately came to mind. Emma's behavior and the issue with the suspicious person. I carefully told him everything, making sure not to leave out any details. After hearing me out, Mark's face turned pale. Then he began to talk about a certain junior colleague of his.
There's a guy named Paul, one of my juniors. I think he's come to your flower shop before, so you've probably met him.
Hearing the name, I suddenly remembered. He was the friendly man who looked oddly similar to James in build. The answer seemed to form in my mind before I even thought it through. I know him. Could it be? Mark nodded slightly and pulled out his phone.
I got this strange message from him for some reason.
The message read, "I have to fulfill James' wish, so I'm quitting my job," a cryptic statement. Looking closely, the message had been sent late at night on the day of James' funeral. What is this? James's wish?
I don't know either. But if James had a wish, it was probably just to live happily with you and Emma.
At that moment, suddenly the doorbell rang unexpectedly. I flinched and looked at Mark. He seemed tense as well, his expression growing more serious. However, Emma was different. Without any fear, she went to check the intercom and shouted loudly,
"It's me. I'm home."
Daddy,
With those words, we knew for certain that Paul had finally shown up at our houses.
It's him. It's Paul.
Mark quickly checked the intercom screen and nodded at me. I rushed over and stared at the screen myself. There was Paul, dressed and styled in a way that James would have liked. That alone was enough to instill fear, but what I saw next intensified that terror. In his right hand, a knife gleamed like a sharp blade. I was frozen with fear, unable to move.
that's not Daddy, is it?
Emma looked up at Mark with innocent eyes.
No, it's not Daddy. Stay calm. I'll keep an eye on him from here. Natalie, check all the locks.
On the other side of the intercom, Paul's voice grew louder, frustrated that no one was answering.
"It's me. Open up. I'm telling you to open the door. Unlock it."
In the end, he started violently rattling the locked doorknob, all while wearing a wide smile on his face. What was displayed on the small intercom screen was pure madness. Snapping out of it, I ran through the house, checking that every door and window was securely locked. Luckily, everything was locked, just as we had been cautious about. When I returned, Paul's actions had become more aggressive, and I could hear the doorknob rattling from anywhere in the house.
I've already called the police. It's just a matter of time now.
I rushed to Emma, who was huddled far from the intercom, and held her tight. She was sobbing uncontrollably. "Emma, it's okay now. This will all be over soon." Even as I said that, my own voice was shaking. A few minutes later, several police officers arrived, and the entire scene of them subduing Paul played out on the intercom screen. Paul put up quite a struggle, but it wasn't long before he was apprehended. Overwhelmed with relief, I collapsed and couldn't move.
You're safe now. I'll talk to the police, so you two stay here and rest.
It was at that moment I realized just how much of a pillar of strength Mark had been for us. The thought of what could have happened without him made my blood run cold. In any case, the crisis was over. A few days later, I went to the police station to hear the details of Paul's actions.
It was almost like a form of worship.
According to what the police told me, Paul had an abnormal obsession with James. James had always been kind to everyone, and people naturally liked him. But the story didn't end there.
According to his statement, when Paul was still new at his job, Back when James was still working there, James covered for one of Paul's mistakes and handled it smoothly. That seems to have been the trigger.
That incident marked the beginning of Paul's obsessive admiration for James, almost like worship.
After that, James left the company and started the flower shop, right?
That's right.
It seems like Paul started showing up at the flower shop, and not just once or twice. Did you ever notice anything like that?
No, this is the first I'm hearing of it. I had no idea that was happening. Apparently, James had responded by saying, "My happiness is being with my family, so no matter how many times you come, my answer won't change." And he said it with a cheerful smile. When I heard that, I could vividly picture James's expression, and it made me want to cry.
And as for Paul's reaction, he admired that smile even more. It seems like that's all he cared about.
When Paul heard the news of James's death, his first thought, consumed by madness, was to send the two of you to join James in the same place for his happiness.
From then on, Paul started dressing like James and lurking around your home, waiting for the right moment.
The absurd, delusional motivation left me speechless. A moment of silence passed between us. So, what's going to happen to Paul? It's hard to press charges for just stalking.
Most likely, Paul will be sent to a hospital, possibly a psychiatric facility.
Hearing that left me with mixed feelings. It all felt deeply unsettling. While his actions were undeniably terrifying, I couldn't help but wish there had been a different outcome, considering how much he admired James. At home, Mark and Emma were waiting for me. Mark had kindly taken it upon himself to look after Emma that day. In fact, he had been incredibly thoughtful, taking care of many things for us during this difficult time. Mark, thank you so much. This isn't much, but... On my way back from the police station, I stopped by a nearby cake shop and bought some nice sweets. It was a small token of appreciation for that day and everything else.
Oh, you really didn't have to. I'm sorry for making you feel like you had to do something.
Do you not like sweets?
No, I love them. Thank you, I'll enjoy this.
Mom, what about mine?
Don't worry, I got you some too. Here you go.
Thanks. Can I eat it?
Sure. You've been a good girl, haven't you?
Oh yes, she certainly has.
Watching Emma eagerly dig into her dessert, I finally felt a sense of peace settling in. Looking back, from the moment I heard the news of James' death until now, I hadn't had a single moment to rest my mind. Mark was also sitting across from me, enjoying his treat. After a moment, he spoke up.
By the way, what are you going to do with your flower shop? Are you thinking of closing it down?
No, I'm not going to do that. James and I worked so hard to start this shop, and I'm going to keep it going no matter what.
That's good to hear.
He sighed with relief and muttered softly. However, I didn't have any concrete plans yet. The only thing that comes to mind is to just work as hard as I can without any other clear plan. That won't happen right away either. Since I had taken a break for a while, there was a mountain of work piled up for me to catch up on before I could fully return.
Mom, I'm happy. I love that you run the flower shop.
Thank you, Emma. Maybe when you're a bit older, you can help out too.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Not long after that, I was able to successfully reopen Carter's flower shop. It took some time, But aside from the fact that James wasn't there, things were almost back to normal.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you, as always, today.
I'm not here as a customer, but to help out.
Since then, Mark had been dropping by the shop whenever he had a break from work, helping with whatever needed to be done. Honestly, I couldn't thank him enough. Watching him stand at the front of the shop in his own apron, I couldn't help but see a bit of James in him. Whether that was a good thing or not, I wasn't sure.
These flowers are so beautiful. What are they called?
They were lilies of the valley. Their meaning, happiness will return again. They were also James' favorite flowers. I got them this morning. Aren't the small blossoms adorable?
Yes, they are. Let's put them somewhere where they'll be appreciated even more.
With that, he took the pot of lilies of the valley outside and placed it in a spot where the sunlight hit perfectly. I was taken aback when I saw it. That was James's favorite spot to stand.
There, that's better. See, they look even more beautiful now.
Whether Mark knew it or not, he had placed James's favorite flowers in the very spot where James loved to stand. I couldn't hold back my tears.
Well, I'm sorry. Should I not have moved them?
No, that's not it. That's not. The lilies of the valley swayed in the breeze. It was a warm wind, the kind that felt like it could carry away the tears running down my cheeks. As I watched the flowers sway, James's smiling face appeared in my mind once again. If one day I could see James again, I would proudly tell him, "The family you loved is cherished by so many people." And then he would give me that bright smile once more.
Even Emily agrees with the divorce.
Kenny mailed me the divorce papers while I was stationed overseas for work. When I asked him what was going on, he started blaming me for unreasonable things. And at the same time, I ended up being treated horribly by our daughter. I'd reached my limit and immediately took action. Just like they wanted, I proceeded with the divorce right away. This will make life so much easier. I couldn't help but let that thought slip out. I was so thrilled by their proposal. Without telling them anything, I quickly had the divorce finalized and planned to give them a little surprise before moving abroad. My name is Samantha Harper. I'm 40 years old. I used to be a world-renowned professional dancer. Now, I'm retired from active performance, but I still travel the globe with my dance team as the owner and coach. Last month, we were in France. Currently, we're staying in another country. We're spending our days in intense training, trying to absorb the powerful and dynamic dance styles of the local dancers.
Speaking of which, isn't your daughter about to take her college entrance exams?
Just like you, does she want to become a professional dancer in the future?
Oh, please, we don't need more competition.
I've been living with these dancers for over 5 years. We're so close that there are no secrets between us. We share everything like a family. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen.
Really? She doesn't want to be a dancer?
No, it's more like she can't become a pro. My daughter, Emily, once looked up to me and wanted to become a professional dancer. But to be honest, she's not very good. Even if she improved with effort, she probably wouldn't reach the level needed to compete on the world stage. Her athleticism and sense of rhythm are below average. No matter how much she trains, she'll only ever be mediocre, so I told her she should give up on becoming a pro. As a parent, I want to support her, but as a professional, I think she should invest her time in something else and acquire a solid skill.
Oh, I totally get that.
Since we're pros, we see it even more clearly. In this world, so many people aim to go pro and end up failing. We often wonder, what else could they have achieved in that time?
They're right. I think the same thing about Emily. She has no plan for her future. If she fails to become a professional, what will she do then? She came to me wanting to be a pro dancer without any solid plan, with just a vague, I want to be a professional dancer. But this world isn't easy enough for someone without a plan to just blindly aim for the top. It's questionable whether she could even reach a level where she could become a coach. I was furious with her naive thinking, and we had a heated argument.
I hope your husband can step in and help your daughter let go of that dream.
That's unlikely. He's ridiculously soft on Emily. Unlike me, Kenny would do anything Emily asks. Even if she doesn't have the talent, he'll encourage her with empty words. Maybe that's the right thing to do as a parent, but I find it irresponsible. I know how tough this world is, so I believe that if she's going to give up on her dream just because someone said she couldn't do it, she shouldn't start in the first place. Those who are truly serious about their dreams aren't swayed by others' opinions. They trust their instincts and push forward. That's why they have the resolve and strong will to aim for the world stage. But Emily lacks that determination. She's just going along with Kenny's flattery, aiming to be a professional dancer without understanding reality. She thinks, if my mom can do it, then so can I. But she's saying that based on shallow feelings. And yet, Kenny kept flattering Emily.
Emily, you're a real genius. You're such a great dancer and you're beautiful. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, Dad, you're overpraising me. But do you really think so? I kind of feel the same way. I think I'm overflowing with talent, enough to become a pro easily.
Was Kenny's behavior really in the best interest of our child? Before leaving America for the last time, I had an argument with him about it.
Well, I'm heading out.
Thanks for your hard work.
As I was thinking about all this, I realized that today's practice had come to an end. After finishing up the cleaning and packing up, I saw the dancers off and started writing the daily report when I got a phone call. It was from a resident of the homestay I was staying at, letting me know that a letter had arrived for me. Curious, I rushed home to pick up the letter, and the contents were shocking. No way. Inside, there was a photo showing Kenny and someone I recognized disappearing into a hotel. I was so stunned by the shocking content that I was at a loss for words. As I stood there, unable to process what I was seeing, my phone rang again through an app, this time from my legal advisor.
Have you seen the letter?
Oh, what does this mean?
Please listen calmly. Actually,
In the heavy silence, the lawyer began to speak in a serious tone. Hearing what he had to say, I was so shocked that I dropped my phone to the ground. Hearing the sound, Mary, the resident of the homestay, came over and, noticing my dazed state, spoke to me with concern.
What happened? Is something wrong?
She's the wife of the house. Mary's always bright and energetic, like a ray of sunshine, and I'm really uplifted by her presence. She's truly my source of strength. The moment I saw her, I couldn't say a word and just clung to her, bursting into tears. After I explained the situation, she told me to go home immediately.
How could he cheat on you? That's unforgivable. You need to deal with that man right away.
The letter had indeed included photos of Kenny caught in the act of cheating.
He hurts you when you're working so hard. Should I go with you? I can bring my husband too, and we'll set your husband straight.
Her words, spoken with the genuine anger of a mother, really comforted me. Thank you, but I'll be okay. Talking to you has calmed me down a bit. I said this to reassure Mary, but she still looked at me with concern.
Are you sure? But what are you going to do? If you leave it like this, you'll be the one who gets hurt.
I can't go back right now. The competition is the day after tomorrow, and the dancers are in full concentration mode. I can't let my personal issues disrupt them.
So, you're just going to take it? That doesn't sit right with me. I hate to see you suffer like this.
Don't worry, I have a plan. Hearing that I couldn't go back, Mary looked at me anxiously. I smiled to reassure her, then quickly contacted my manager back in the States. I asked her for a favor and spoke to the lawyer as well. Everything's set. Thanks for letting me know.
You're welcome. But what are you going to do?
I'm going to teach them a lesson. They've been living off me and enjoying themselves. Now it's time for them to pay the price, Kenny. And so, I decided to take my revenge on them. After the competition, I received a letter from Kenny, just as I had expected.
How's life over there? Things are the same here. Everything's peaceful.
The beginning of the letter was filled with trivial small talk, but when I saw the document enclosed, I furrowed my brow.
Let's skip the small talk and get straight to the point. I want us to separate. To be clear, I want a divorce.
The letter had a divorce paper attached. I read the letter expressionlessly, and it was full of accusations against me.
Honestly, I've been fed up with you for a long time. You can't even support Emily's dreams, you're overseas all the time, and don't participate in parenting. On top of that, you've left everything at home to me. Honestly, do we even need to stay married?
Reading the letter, I was stunned. Kenny was the one who supported my dream of becoming a professional dancer, and he was the one who insisted on having a child. I knew I would be traveling a lot internationally, so I left most of the child rearing to him. That's why I kept refusing for so long.
But it's fine. I'll take full responsibility for raising the child.
Yet, despite his insistence, it was Kenny who pressured me into having a child. So, I let him take care of the housework and parenting while I pursued my career outside. That's why I never gave up on my dream, and he agreed to my overseas assignments. Under that agreement, I gave birth to our child. I still had the contract we signed at that time in my possession. And yet, here he was, acting like some kind of tragic hero. I couldn't understand what he was thinking, and it made my blood boil. The anger rose within me so much that I nearly crushed the letter in my hand.
So, because of all this, I want a divorce. Emily is in favor of it too. I don't want to deal with you directly anymore, so I've unclosed the divorce papers. Please mail them back once you've filled them out.
And the address he listed wasn't even our home. It was his parents' house. Now it's clear. Kenny isn't at our home anymore. He is probably staying at his mistress's place. Thanking Kenny for making things so obvious, I signed the divorce papers. Mary, concerned, asked if I was okay, and I flashed her a big smile, saying, "I'm fine. This will make life so much easier." I was so overjoyed that my inner thoughts slipped out in a whisper. I'd been bleeding dry financially for so long. Now that money could be saved and used for my living expenses, I couldn't be happier. They did whatever they wanted. Now, it's my turn to do the same. They'll regret picking a fight with me. And so, I swore to get my revenge on them. A month later, I returned to the US for a brief visit and took care of some legal procedures. Since then, I've been living abroad. You could call it a permanent relocation. Our dance team is aiming for global success. Since we rarely stay in one place for long, it's much more convenient to have a home base overseas. Thanks to the generosity of Mary and her husband, I've been living with the team. Mary's husband, who works for a real estate company, got us a great deal on an apartment close to their home. As a result, our team's unity improved, and we won every match in the latest competition. Everyone could feel the progress we were making. Then it happened.
Isn't your phone ringing?
Yeah, it is. We were enjoying dinner together when my phone rang, interrupting the fun. The caller ID didn't show a name, just an unfamiliar number. Thinking it might be work-related, I answered, only to be met with a loud, angry voice.
Samantha, what have you done? Get back here right now. Give me back my house.
It was Kenny, and I could hear Emily's voice in the background too. It seemed they had finally realized what was going on after a month, and now they were frantically calling me.
When I tried to call you, I found out that both Emily and I are blocked. What's going on? Blocking your family. What are you thinking?
Get back here and fix this. Why is our house gone? What happened to our stuff?
They were both panicking, their voices shrill as they kept hurling words at me. How could they suddenly want to fix everything after leaving the house unattended for a month? Don't make me laugh. Even though that's what I was thinking, I didn't let any of it show. I kept my expression calm and quietly began to speak. We're divorced now. That house is useless, right? So I went ahead and sold it. Your stuff is with your mom. If you want it, go get it.
What? With Mom? Does she know you sold the house?
Kenny was shocked by my confession and raised his voice. As soon as I got back to the States, I immediately filed the divorce papers. I also sold the house, which was in my name, without asking him. Because of their belongings, I contacted his parents. They are mature people who listen to me calmly.
Kenny told us out of the blue that you were getting divorced. We've been worried about you, Samantha.
Has our useless son done something to make you hate him? He doesn't work much and just lazes around the house, right? Even though you're the breadwinner, as a man, I'm ashamed.
They were more supportive and understanding of my career as a professional than Kenny ever was. They also acknowledged that Kenny took care of the housework and parenting, and they always thought I was too good of a wife for him. Because of that, they didn't just take Kenny's side in all this, but listened to my perspective too. Thanks to them, I could explain my situation, and they were furious with Kenny. They even offered to call him right away.
That's just awful.
When you got married, we talked to Kenny about this, didn't we? And yet, he tried to take away your freedom and handle things so one-sidedly.
We'll do anything we can to help, so don't hesitate to ask. At the very least, let us support you.
I was truly grateful for their kindness. Even though the situation was embarrassing, they remained warm and considerate towards me. After selling the house, they accepted the belongings via cash on delivery and assured me they'd make sure Kenny and Emily faced consequences when they came to pick them up. Of course, Kenny would be billed for all of this later, and everything was settled. Thanks to their generosity, I completed my move out of the US.
That's a dirty trick, getting my parents on your side.
Dirty? Who was it that started this whole thing with unreasonable accusations and then demanded a divorce? Kenny's attempt to play the victim made my anger flare up, and I couldn't hold it back. I heard him gasp on the other end, as if scared by my raised voice. I've been thinking about the future and the kids this whole time, and you're the one who acted on your own despite knowing all of this, and now you want a divorce? Don't be ridiculous. This is what happens when you don't think things through. I fully understood that Kenny and Emily were feeling lonely. Despite that, I did everything I could for them these past few years. Having my efforts betrayed and then being blamed for everything, there's no way I could accept that. Especially when the reason for the divorce was his infidelity. This was beyond outrageous. My anger surged, and my voice grew cold. You can't even make responsible decisions on your own, yet you have the nerve to complain. You've been living off me this whole time, and now you're calling me a bad parent because I've been working hard to earn money. Don't make me laugh. Normally, I'm a calm person. I don't raise my voice or threaten others. But this time, I couldn't hold back my emotions. I loved Kenny, and no matter how much we argued, I always thought of Emily. In fact, because they were my family, I tried to face them head on. But who could have imagined that I'd end up being treated like this, to the point of being asked for a divorce? There's no way they could understand how I felt when I found out. And I don't want them to understand. Sensing my rising anger, one of the dancers came over to support me, gently rubbing my back. I had explained the situation to them, and they had offered to help if needed. So, I put the phone on speaker and recorded the conversation to have them as witnesses. They were listening in real time as the conversation unfolded.
But still, selling the house without asking? That house was mine too. You should have asked for permission.
Realizing Kenny was losing ground, Emily spoke up next. Emily has been hostile towards me ever since we talked about her future. Our pro team has a junior division, and one of the girls there doesn't get along with Emily. Emily thinks I'm favoring that girl, and that's why I told her to give up on becoming a pro. That's what she's been thinking. No matter how many times I've tried to explain it, she only focuses on her own opinion. When I found myself at a loss, I reluctantly assigned one of my subordinates as an instructor for Emily. She's currently taking lessons from that instructor. The deal was, if she showed improvement and got closer to the pro level, they'd take her under their wing. But even that didn't satisfy her, so she went to Kenny for support. She convinced him to try and get that other girl kicked off the team instead of focusing on her own progress. Of course, that suggestion was rejected. And since then, she's been constantly picking fights with me. You were never home. Besides, your stuff is safely with your grandparents. What's the problem?
Of course, it's a problem. A home is essential for living, and you took that away from us. That's grounds for emotional distress damages.
The moment she mentioned damages, I leaned back on the sofa with a triumphant smile. If you think you can get anything, go ahead and try with a lawyer. But it's not going to happen.
Why not?
Emily bit back at me, clearly frustrated, while I remained completely unbothered. My feelings shifted from exasperation to pity. Do you even know who bought that house and who has been paying for it all this time? Now that the divorce papers are filed, your being there is trespassing, and I can have you legally removed. You chose to side with Kenny, so even though you're my daughter, I could have you arrested for trespassing.
What?
Her ignorance was so blatant it was almost embarrassing, and I let out a deep sigh. She's acting all tough without knowing anything. I can at least give her credit for her audacity. But ignorance is dangerous in life. I decided to hit her with a harsh dose of reality. As Emily gasped in shock, I could hear Kenny talking to a woman in the background. The moment I heard that voice, I smirked and urged her to join the conversation. And another thing, if you're thinking of going up against me, don't bother. Kenny doesn't stand a chance.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, don't act clueless. The reason is right in front of you, isn't it? Why don't you stop sneaking around and let her speak too? Isn't Hannah there? At the mention of Hannah's name, I could hear both Kenny and Emily gasp. Hannah Tarner, Emily's dance instructor, and a former member of the same pro team as me. She's an exceptional dancer, and if I weren't around, she could have been the star of the team. Her skills were top-notch, and we were good partners who pushed each other during our pro days. But Hannah didn't see it that way. She, like Kenny and Emily, resented me and used them to get back at me. When I asked her to be Emily's instructor, she used that as an excuse to get closer to Kenny. Even though she knew Emily wasn't that talented, she fed her lies and manipulated both of them. 6 months ago, she secured her position as Kenny's mistress. Kenny, meanwhile, was funneling large amounts of money to Hannah, complaining about how tough life was, while asking me for more money.
It's for Emily's lessons, so could you increase it by about $500?
When he'd bring up Emily and the house, I couldn't argue. I had resolved never to let them struggle financially, so I worked hard. No matter how much they asked, I always provided. But look how that turned out. He was buying expensive gifts for his mistress while cozying up to her while I was out earning the money. How could such a ridiculous situation even exist? Suppressing my rising anger, I provocatively lured Hannah into the conversation, and she responded with a calm, confident tone.
How did you know I was here?
She reacted without a hint of panic, staying composed. Unlike Kenny and the others, Hannah handled herself like an adult. I carefully chose my words, making sure not to say anything reckless. A little bird told me, I got a tip that you've been having an affair with Kenny for the past 6 months. And apparently, Emily's been practically living with you too. You've really done a number on my family, haven't you?
Don't blame me for ruining anything. If you'd been keeping things in check, they wouldn't have been so easily taken by someone else, right? You brought this on yourself, so don't make it sound like it's my fault. I was just taking care of Kenny and Emily's mental well-being.
Mental well-being? She's just waiting for the divorce to be finalized so she can take what she wants and dump them. I could see right through Hannah's plan. She's always been like that, talented, but willing to use dirty tactics to push others down. Back when she was on the team, the second best dancer after her was someone who was practically my right hand. Before Hannah came along, the two of us were a team, and I even planned to bring her onto the pro team I'm running now. But Hannah, jealous of her skill and my favoritism, leaked private photos of her to a tabloid. That girl also had a modeling career, and Hannah's actions severely damaged it. As a result, she was fired from her agency. The team, fearing a scandal, also terminated her contract. Hannah ruined her life. She told me later that Hannah had deceived her. Hannah gained her trust, drove a wedge between us, and then extracted private information from her, which she sold to a tabloid. When the scandal broke and she confronted Hannah, all Hannah did was laugh and say,
It's your fault for trusting so easily.
My friend lost her career, friends, and even her lover all at once, leading to a complete mental breakdown. It took a long time for her to recover, and by the time she did, re-entering society was nearly impossible. I eventually brought her onto my team as a manager, and she's now in charge of my family's affairs, reporting to me on anything significant.
I saw Kenny mentioned on Hannah's blog, so I did some digging, and it was bad. Just like what happened to me, I think Kenny and the others have been manipulated by Hannah.
Thanks to my manager, who saw Kenny walking with Hannah in the city and quickly investigated, I was able to catch on to this situation early. The reason I was able to respond so swiftly was because of this sequence of events. Finally, after all these years, I'm getting my revenge on Hannah. I kept my excitement in check and responded to her words. Mental well-being care at a hotel, huh? I wonder what kind of care that was. And it wasn't just once or twice, was it? I've got solid evidence. You might as well admit it. You're definitely going to have to pay damages.
Don't be ridiculous. If we're talking damages, I should be the one claiming them. You dumped everything on Kenny while acting all high and mighty. Now that you're divorced, we're talking about splitting assets too, right? If you want to fight, I'm ready to take you on.
Does she even understand her position? She's acting all tough, but she's just the mistress. There's no way she can win against me, the wife. Anyone can see that. And yet she talks as if she's in a stronger position. I couldn't help but be baffled by her mindset. Sounds like Kenny hasn't told you anything.
What?
Kenny ended up doing all the housework and childcare because he chose that life. And by the way, he signed a contract about it, which I have in my possession. It's got his fingerprint on it and everything, so it's stronger than any regular contract.
What?
Clearly, Kenny hadn't told her a thing. Hearing about the contract, Hannah was visibly shaken. She must have thought she could just bluff her way through and squeeze some money out of me. But there's no way I'm letting that happen. This is my chance to finally settle the score. Kenny, Emily, and Hannah are all going to get what they deserve. By the way, I've also kept the contract we signed when we had our child. If this goes to court, I'm pretty sure you'll be the one at a disadvantage.
Let's just calm down and talk this out. There's no need for a lawsuit. We can resolve this like adults.
What? What are you talking about? Typical Hannah. Unlike Kenny and Emily, she doesn't just react emotionally. The moment she realized she was in a tough spot, she switched to negotiation. But there's no way I'm letting her off that easily. I immediately changed my tone, making it harsher, and whispered some chilling words to her. You seduced someone's husband, destroyed a family, and even tried to take the kids. Do you really think I'm going to settle this with a simple discussion? I've already talked to my lawyer. You want to sue for damages? Go ahead and try. I sneered at the three of them as they panicked. You think Kenny has the kind of assets worth fighting over? Big mistake. The money he had was just what I deposited for our living expenses. He's unemployed and broke.
What? So you've been deceiving me from the start. What about him leaving in a suit every morning?
That statement confirmed they were living together. I had all the evidence I needed now. This was a total victory for me. They didn't stand a chance. And to think Kenny even pretended to go to work just to look good in front of Hannah. What a pathetic waste of effort. I couldn't understand it.
Well, that's...
If you want to argue, do it after we're done here. Now, for the main event. I've been recording this entire conversation, and it's on speaker for the team to hear too.
What?
Hearing those words, Hannah realized she was saying things that put her at a disadvantage. She immediately stopped talking, and an awkward silence filled the air. She was probably trying to figure out how to get out of this situation. I could tell she was thinking hard to find a way, but I wasn't going to give her that chance. I pushed Kenny and them even further into a corner. I've got solid proof of your affair, and if we take this to court, my victory is guaranteed.
Are you trying to blackmail me?
When Hannah realized what I was getting at, she raised her voice in anger, and one of my students, visibly annoyed, was about to jump in. But I quickly stopped her and continued speaking calmly. Blackmail? Don't make me laugh. You think this is just about money?
What?
She probably wanted me to deny it, but that wasn't happening. Last month, a company agreed to sponsor our dance team. The CEO recently visited, so I had the chance to meet with him. He's the CEO of a beverage company. Hannah finally seemed to realize what I was getting at. Her confidence disappeared, and she started to stumble over her words. I'm thinking of sharing this conversation with him, along with all the evidence, photos, recordings, everything.
Please don't.
The moment I said that, Hannah screamed at me to stop. Kenny and Emily listening beside her must have been shocked too. I could easily imagine their shoulders jolting in surprise. Oh, what's wrong? Why are you suddenly so loud?
Please, I'm begging you. Don't do that. I'll do whatever you say.
What's with this sudden change? What happened? Well, Hala was clearly struggling to find the right words, unable to speak. So I revealed a secret she didn't want anyone to know. Yeah, you'd be in big trouble if he found out. That reaction makes sense. After all, that company's CEO is your father, isn't he?
What?
Yes, the CEO of the beverage company sponsoring our team was none other than Hannah's father. Hannah's father has been a dedicated supporter of mine since my active days, a true fan. He had previously offered to support me, and since he wanted to meet me in person, I kept it on hold. I wanted to get Hannah's permission too, which is why I told her about it. She was jealous because her father favored me. I was aware of that. I wonder what your father, the CEO of a big company, would think if he found out about this.
Please, anything but that.
Oh, it might be too late for that. You see, your father has been listening to this entire conversation with us.
What?
The moment I revealed this shocking truth, time seemed to stop for Hannah. To prove it, I asked her father to speak, and the tone of Hannah's voice shifted dramatically when she heard him.
You're a real piece of work, aren't you?
Dad, it's not what you think. I only did this to trap her and about the marriage.
Marriage.
Hannah's facade began to crumble. The moment she mentioned marriage in front of Kenny, her father revealed a shocking truth.
If you're talking about the engagement, I'll inform your fiance's family that it's off. He's too good for a foolish daughter like you. Go ahead and marry or date that man if you want. I'm done with you.
Wait, Dad, please, listen to me.
Hey, what's going on? Marriage? Engagement? Hannah!
As the two of them began their ugly argument, I quietly ended the call. I immediately blocked their numbers and turned off my phone. After that, everything started moving quickly. As it turned out, Hannah has been engaged for about 2 months. Her fiancé is a business partner of her father's company, which is another big catch. He's a successful man, and I've met him before. So I explained the situation to Hannah's father. Just like earlier, he was furious and told the fiancé everything. The fiancé had already been suspicious of Hannah's behavior, so he quickly understood and called off the engagement. As a result, Hannah lost the trust of both her fiancé and her father and was disowned. She had been living comfortably thanks to her father, but that lifestyle was now stripped away. On top of that, I filed a claim for damages, and now she works nonstop from morning till night. I've heard she's completely broken, both mentally and physically. As for Kenny and Emily, once they found out Hannah had been using them, all hell broke loose. They realized that Hannah never loved them. She was only using them to get to me. The moment they learned the truth, they were furious. However, Hannah only said things. She never actually took any action. In the end, it was Kenny and Emily who decided to side with Hannah, cut ties with me, and go through with the divorce. They brought this on themselves. Hannah discarded them, and they ended up turning to his parents for help. But things didn't go as they'd hoped.
We don't know you anymore. Don't come back here.
When you find a new place, let us know, and we'll send your furniture and belongings. You'll have to pay for the shipping. We have no other business with you.
His parents had had enough of them. Instead of getting angry or lecturing them, they simply relayed the necessary information and shut them out. With nowhere else to turn, they started calling me repeatedly.
Please, Samantha, we were wrong. We didn't know we were being tricked by her.
Mom, I'm so sorry. I won't go against you anymore. I'll listen to you and think seriously about my future. So please, come back. Let's be a family again.
Hearing them submit and apologize, I just laughed at them mockingly. What a joke. Don't you get it? I don't want anything to do with you anymore.
No.
As I listened to their voices filled with despair, I delivered one final blow. I know I made you feel lonely at times, but I also made sure to give you all the love I could. And now, after being betrayed like this, I'm going to take it all the way. You'll regret betraying me. You'll see hell for it. Hearing those words, the two of them gasped, struck silent by fear. They desperately tried to apologize, but I ended the call without listening to their pleas. I instructed my lawyer to file claims for both the infidelity and the divorce. Given the combination of infidelity and trespassing, Kenny didn't get a share in the division of assets. Moreover, since he didn't have enough savings to pay the damages, Kenny and Emily were forced to leave the city and ended up working on a tuna fishing boat. They're both working long, grueling hours, from early morning until late at night, living their own version of hell. When my manager told me about their current situation, I felt completely at peace. The dancers around me were moved by the satisfying turn of events, and we celebrated that night. We enjoyed delicious food and drinks.
This is how women should be.
No way am I going to let a man trample over my life.
You're all absolutely right. We women have to live strong.
Our dance team has always prided itself on projecting the image of strong women, so everyone praised me for standing up for myself. Mary joined in too, and we had a big party that night. We partied so hard that it even affected the next day's lessons. To me, these dancers are my true family. I'll continue to support them as we aim even higher together. I swore to commit myself to their success.
My name is Catherine, and I'm 52. Today, I'm at a busy shopping district. As I gaze at a white dress displayed in a store window, someone calls out to me from behind.
Catherine.
I turn around to see my ex-husband, Bob, whom I divorced 20 years ago, standing there with my own sister, Sarah.
It really is you, Catherine. Long time no see.
Long time no see. I lift the corner of my lips in a slight greeting. Sarah had an affair with Bob and took him away from me. It seems they've forgotten all about that, casually greeting me like old friends.
Were you looking at that dress?
Yes, I thought it was lovely.
What's the point of buying something like that? Where would you even wear it? You're still single, right?
What?
You know, she's walking around alone on a weekend afternoon, so she must be single.
Exactly. Maybe she's planning to wear it on a date with her imaginary husband.
They chuckled to themselves while looking at me. They probably see me as some poor, lonely single woman. But nowadays, marriage isn't the only way to find happiness. I actually feel a bit sorry for them, stuck with such outdated thinking. Then Sarah went even further with her rude questions.
Are you still struggling with infertility?
My face froze, and they didn't miss it.
So you're still dealing with it, right?
Not that it matters. She's single now, so who's there to worry about?
True.
The fact that they casually brought up such a delicate issue like infertility shows that even after 20 years and reaching their 50s, they haven't changed a bit. It's true that I never had children with Bob. When we were married, I'd suggested something to him.
Hey, Bob, could you get tested too?
Tested? For what?
For infertility. I've already done mine, but you haven't yet.
No way, that's embarrassing. Infertility is obviously a woman's problem.
That's an outdated belief. Nowadays, people know that infertility can also be caused by men.
But Bob kept finding excuses not to get tested. While I avoided alcohol, watched my diet, and did everything I could, he just indulged in his cigarettes, booze, and greasy foods without a care. It stressed me out to feel like I was the only one putting in the effort. And yet he still wanted kids, something I found deeply frustrating at the time. Eventually, we stopped having conversations altogether, and before I knew it, Bob and Sarah were having an affair.
I am pregnant with Bob's child.
When Sarah said that to me, my mind went completely blank.
See, I told you I wasn't the reason we couldn't have kids.
I'll never forget the look on Bob's face at that moment. It was a smug, condescending look, as if he'd finally proven his point.
Here, this is the divorce paperwork. I've already signed my part, so go ahead and sign yours. Once you're done, pack up and get out.
From today, I'll be the one living here.
After our divorce, Sarah was disowned by our family. We haven't seen each other since, so running into her so suddenly threw me off guard. It's been 20 years since then. I wonder if their kid is all grown up by now. As I pondered, Bob and Sarah started bragging about the wonderful family life they'd built.
After our divorce, I got promoted at work. It's more responsibility, but with a higher salary, I can provide well for my family.
Yeah, it was right after he left you. Seems like you were bad luck, you know?
Sarah laughed, half jokingly.
Hey kid, a great job and every weekend spent together as a family. It's a happy life. Our son's in college now, so we don't see him as much, but we still get together for family dinners sometimes.
Your son's in college.
Yeah, and not just any college. He's at Yale.
Wow, that's a tough school to get into.
Yeah, the tuition is steep, but he's our pride and joy. Bob's worked hard to cover it, and we've managed just fine.
He must be really smart. You were always a top student yourself, Sarah.
He's not just smart. My son's a brilliant, handsome genius.
A brilliant, handsome genius.
Yeah, he started speaking early and could do math before he even started school.
He always aced his tests in elementary school and was such a good athlete that he was on the relay team every year.
Wow, that's impressive.
Want to see a photo?
Without waiting for me to ask, Bob pulled his phone out of his pocket and showed me a picture of his son.
Look at him. Handsome, like a model, isn't he?
He really is handsome. I bet he's popular with the girls.
Absolutely. He gets love letters by the dozen.
Bob and Sarah looked absolutely delighted, radiating pride as they boasted about their son. However, when I looked at the photo of their son, I felt a strange sense of unease. He doesn't look much like you, Bob.
What?
The son in the photo had a sharp, defined face and looked tall. Sarah also had distinct features and a well-defined nose, so I could see some resemblance to her. But I couldn't find any similarity with Bob at all.
What do you mean he doesn't look like me? He's a spitting image.
Isn't he giving himself a little too much credit? Bob seemed annoyed, clearly not pleased with my remark.
He does look like me, doesn't he?
Bob asked Sarah for confirmation.
Yo, maybe around the dip of the nose, right?
Sarah answered brightly, but I noticed a slight flicker in her gaze.
See, she says he looks like me. Just because you don't have kids doesn't mean you have to nitpick.
Seriously, the bitterness from single people is scary, you know? Kind of aggressive.
Yeah, she's probably tense, knowing she'll be alone in her old age.
I'm not tense at all. I just thought he didn't look like you.
Catherine, enough already.
Sarah glared at me, clearly uncomfortable with the topic. I'm sorry, that was rude of me.
Watch yourself, single and with a bad attitude. There's no helping that.
We're only trying to give you some advice, so be grateful, okay?
Yes, thank you. I smiled politely. At that moment, a voice called out from behind me.
Mom, sorry for keeping you waiting.
My daughter approached, wearing a navy blue dress, walking briskly toward us. You took a while.
The line at the restroom was long. Who are these people?
They are some old acquaintances of mine. Oh, let me introduce you. This is my daughter, Emma. She just turned 20 this year.
What?
Nice to meet you. I'm Emma.
She said, greeting them politely. Her greeting was flawless and perfectly respectful.
Nice to meet you.
Hello.
They both blinked in surprise. Since Sarah was disowned by our family, Emma doesn't even know I have a sister. Of course, she also has no idea that my ex-husband Bob and Sarah had an affair. I have no intention of telling her, either. Emma, go grab a coffee nearby and wait for me. I'll join you in a bit.
Okay, excuse me then.
After Emma politely said goodbye and walked away, the two of them approached me,
What's going on here?
A daughter. Catherine, I thought you were single.
I just had lunch with Emma at that restaurant over there.
That's not what I'm asking.
They kept getting closer. I held up my hand to stop them. First off, I got remarried and had kids.
Why didn't you say anything earlier?
Well, you assumed I was single from the start, and I figured we'd never see each other again, so I didn't feel the need to correct you. Sarah's face twisted in discomfort.
So, how did you meet your husband? And Emma's 20. She's almost the same age as our son. Isn't that timeline a bit off?
Wait, Catherine, you didn't have an affair, did you?
Don't compare me to you two. I met him after we divorced.
So, where did you meet him?
They seemed overly curious about my new husband, pressing me for details, so I explained. After divorcing Bob, I was so frustrated and angry that I started going to the gym to blow off steam.
The gym.
Sarah looked blank, unsure where this was going. After a while, a guy approached me. We started chatting. He'd listened to my troubles, and eventually, we went out to eat together. They quietly listened to the story of how my husband and I met. Eventually, he asked to be in a relationship with him, with marriage in mind. I was surprised but happy, so I agreed. 6 months later, we got married. Soon after the wedding, I found out I was pregnant, and here we are.
So, you weren't infertile after all.
That's your first reaction.
Why couldn't we have kids?
Bob crossed his arms, and Sarah flinched slightly beside him. By the way, I have another child, a boy in middle school.
What?
A second one?
They exclaimed in surprise, louder than anything else they'd said all day. My son went out with my husband. He wanted to take pictures of a train. He's a bit of a train enthusiast. Neither Emma nor I have any interest in trains, so we're doing our own thing today. Bob's eyes widened, as if he were looking at a rare creature.
You got remarried and had 2 kids after being infertile. No way, that's impossible.
Could you stop going on and on about infertility? It's actually a sensitive topic.
Why? You were infertile.
This isn't working. He's completely missing the point. Is he really that shocked I have kids? I watched Bob in his state of confusion, sighing as I did. But as he kept pestering me with why over and over, I finally voiced what I'd fought for the past 20 years. Maybe the infertility issue was on your end.
What?
At last, Bob reacted. His expression looked as if he was offended by what I had said.
Me, the reason for infertility? No way. If I were the problem, Sarah and I wouldn't have had a child. Right?
Well, yes, that's true.
Sarah, caught off guard, stumbled over her response. Then why do you only have 1 child together? My question made them both fall silent.
I want more than 1 child. I was an only child and always felt envious of friends with siblings.
That was something Bob often mentioned when we were together. There was no way someone like him would settle for just 1 child. If he was confident there was no issue on his side, he would have tried for a second or third.
Well,
It seemed I had struck a nerve, and Bob faltered.
Of course I wanted a second one, but it just didn't happen. You know, kids are a blessing, right? And besides, I'm happy enough with just our son.
He tried to act strong, but his expression betrayed the discomfort I'd caused by hitting so close to home. Then Sarah stepped between us, frowning, and said,
Look, stop making mean comments to get back at me for taking your husband.
Get back at you, being mean.
Well, yeah, talking about pregnancy like that, asking such personal questions about something so sensitive.
Are you two seriously saying this? The irony was too much, and I couldn't help but laugh.
What's so funny?
But you both kept asking me if I was still struggling with infertility, or saying, are you still dealing with infertility, and you were infertile. Sarah's face flushed red, and she started to tremble. I couldn't help but laugh. You two have no room to talk, sorry about that. And no, I wasn't trying to get back at you or be mean. I was simply asking something I was curious about.
Just because you got remarried doesn't mean you should act all high and mighty. Come on, let's go.
Sarah grabbed Bob's arm, trying to leave. Sarah seemed eager to leave, as if discussing children any further might reveal something she didn't want to share. Oh no, I'm not letting you get away that easily. I felt as though fate was giving me the perfect chance to address the humiliation of 20 years ago. As Sarah pulled Bob along with great force, I called out, So, are you still seeing that model-looking guy? Sarah froze in her tracks. She turned around, her face pale.
What are you talking about?
Bob, the only one oblivious, looked confused.
Oh, nothing. Let's go.
When you got together with Bob, you were still seeing another guy, weren't you?
What?
Don't start lying now.
Sarah marched up to me, looking livid. It's not a lie. I had a professional investigator look into it. Back when I was going through the divorce, I had hired someone to investigate Sarah and Bob. I always thought the infertility issue was with Bob, but then Sarah got pregnant, and I felt something was off.
Something was off.
Yes, I started to wonder if Bob was really the father of Sarah's baby.
What?
Sarah's breathing grew heavy, her shoulders rising and falling. She was trying to keep calm, but her anxiety was clear. There was nothing on Bob's end, but Sarah was caught. I got clear photos of her going into a hotel with a man who looked like a model.
No, it can't be.
Sarah, is this true? Tell me Catherine is lying. I'm the father, right?
Bob grabbed Sarah's shoulders, desperately seeking confirmation. Sarah said nothing. When I saw your son's photo earlier, I couldn't help but wonder. He looked just like the man in the investigator's photos. I remembered Sarah's affair partner well because he had a very striking face. Sarah shook off Bob's hands and looked straight at me. It would make more sense if that man were your son's father.
Catherine.
Sarah's hand reached toward my throat. I dodged and stepped back. Not here, in such a crowded place.
What's going through your mind?
Nothing.
Don't speak in baseless assumptions.
You're right. It's just a guess about your son, but Bob, it's a fact that Sarah was seeing another man besides you. That should be enough. His heart will now be full of distrust toward her, and it will eat away at him slowly. Sarah seemed uneasy at Bob's silence, nervously fidgeting with her right hand touching her left repeatedly.
Were you cheating?
It's amusing to see someone who once cheated now doubting someone else's faithfulness.
I wasn't.
Sarah replied, trying to hide her agitation. I still have those old photos as proof. Would you like to see them sometime?
Really? Yes, please.
Catherine.
So it's true, isn't it? Just as Catherine said, you were cheating.
If there really were photos of me with another man, it must have just been a stranger who happened to be walking close by.
A stranger, right? Does Sarah often walk arm in arm with strangers?
What?
In those photos, you and that man were arm in arm.
Sarah.
No, that's not true.
Then maybe our son isn't even mine.
Of course he's yours. Just look at him. He looks just like you.
Sarah frantically pulled out her phone, showing Bob a picture. But the look on his face had changed from the proud smile he wore earlier when he showed me his son's photo. Now he looked skeptical.
Now that you mention it, I don't think any of my friends have ever told me he looks like me.
That's.
They've told me he looks like you a few times, but I've never heard anyone say he looks like me.
Bob's face was darkening with suspicion.
They just didn't say it outright. It's not like they think he doesn't look like you.
Sarah's desperate attempts to reassure him seemed to have little effect, and Bob continued to eye her with doubt. Then, Sarah's anger turned toward me. She was likely frustrated by his unchanging reaction, no matter how much she tried to reassure him. Sarah began desperately trying to change the subject.
By the way, I still haven't seen your family, Catherine. I met him earlier, but I'd love to see your son and husband too.
Sure, here's a photo from my birthday dinner with my family. With a strangely forced smile, Sarah looked at the recent photo I showed her.
Let's see. Wait, this is your husband.
Yes, he works out, so he's pretty muscular, isn't he?
This girl is Emma from earlier, and the boy next to her is.
That's my son. He's in 9th grade. Sarah stared at the photo intently and exclaimed with surprise.
Hold on. That uniform. It's from that prestigious school, isn't it?
You know it well. Yes, he wore it since he came straight from practice that day.
Oh, isn't that the school our son didn't get into?
Stop.
Did your kid take entrance exams for that school?
Well, yes, he did.
Judging from her reaction, it seemed their son hadn't been accepted. Our son started there from elementary school, so it's been an easy path through. He wants to go to a different college, though, so he has to study hard.
Since elementary school?
Yes, my husband went there from elementary school, too, so he was determined to help our son get in. The admissions process was intense, even for us as parents.
I see.
Both of their expressions grew tense. Since they seemed familiar with private boys' school uniforms, it was likely their son had taken entrance exams as well. He might have even enrolled in a private middle school somewhere.
By the way, what about Emma?
Sarah asked, probing further. Emma started at St. Paul's School from elementary school.
That's prestigious too.
Yes, both of my kids are outstanding, almost to the point where it's hard to believe they are mine. They are also considerate and wonderful people. They even planned this surprise birthday dinner for me. I was thrilled. In the photo, the four of us are smiling happily, with a birthday plate in front of me that says, "Happy birthday, Mom." They celebrate my birthday every year.
What a lovely family.
Despite her compliment, Sarah's smile twisted slightly.
I thought you'd end up miserable after the divorce.
It's been years since then. I'm not the type to wallow in misery. As I responded firmly, Bob bit his lip. He was probably frustrated that the woman he left was now living a happier and better life than he was.
But our son is amazing too. Like I mentioned, he's attending Yale.
He's a kind, thoughtful kid, too. He even got me a bottle of wine recently. Isn't he a great son?
The two of them desperately began boasting about their son.
Emma's in college now, too, right? Which school does she attend?
Harvard.
What?
Yes, Emma's at Harvard. Isn't it impressive? It's like a hawk was born from a sparrow.
Emma's at Harvard.
Yes, but she wants to study abroad, so she's planning to take a break from university. It'll be lonely to have her away from home, but studying abroad has always been her dream. Finally, the two of them fell silent. In that moment, I felt grateful for my children's achievements. I'd never pressured them to study. I simply focused on making our home a place where they, along with my husband, would feel most comfortable. The result was that they grew into kind, self-motivated, and remarkable individuals.
Well, it was good seeing you, Catherine.
We probably won't see each other again, but take care.
Looking uncomfortable, they quickly tried to leave. Just then, a young man walking nearby called out.
Hey, isn't that Dad and Mom?
A young man pausing nearby looked at Sarah and Bob and called out to them.
Michael.
The boy Sarah called Michael was dressed far too casually for this part of town, wearing sweats and slip-on sandals. His steps made a loud slapping sound with each step. He had both hands in his pockets, chewing gum noisily. This had to be the son they'd been boasting about.
Who's she?
Michael glanced at me and jerked his chin in my direction. It was hardly the way to greet someone for the first time. Nice to meet you. I'm an acquaintance of theirs. We just ran into each other and were chatting.
I see.
Michael, that's enough. Just go on your way.
What's with that? I was just being nice by saying hi.
Michael shot a glare at Bob. Bob, perhaps used to it, didn't even flinch. I heard from your parents that you're at Yale. That's impressive. When I complimented him, Michael scoffed for some reason.
They lied to you again, right? I applied to Yale, but I didn't get in. Took a gap year and still failed, so now I'm just unemployed.
Oh, I see.
Michael, that's enough. You're embarrassing us.
Embarrassing? Seriously? I put up with all those entrance exams for you too. Got into my second choice in middle school after being yelled at every day, and not once did you look proud. Just disappointed.
Michael unleashed a torrent of resentment he'd likely kept bottled up for years.
There you go again. Everything we did was for you, and now you're wasting it all. Our efforts were a failure.
Calling it a failure is a bit harsh, isn't it? I interjected, unable to stay silent any longer. However, Michael didn't seem bothered by the harsh words.
Fine, failure it is. Since you're my parents, take responsibility for it. $500 will do for now.
Michael held out his right hand toward Bob. He was asking for money.
I just gave you an allowance recently. You need more already.
It's nowhere near enough.
Michael, stop it. You're embarrassing us more and more.
Embarrassing? Who's the real embarrassment here, you cheating couple?
What?
What?
I know all about it. I always wondered why I never visited Mom's family. When I was in high school, I looked up my family registry to check Mom's place of birth.
Michael.
I went to Mom's parents' house and learned everything. You two are seriously disgusting.
Sarah and Bob were stunned. Their faces turned pale, and their hands trembled.
Catherine.
Yes. Suddenly, Michael turned toward me.
You said you're an acquaintance of my parents, but you're actually my dad's ex-wife, right?
That's correct.
So, that makes you my aunt, doesn't it?
Yes.
I apologize on behalf of my parents.
Michael apologized to me. I'm fine. This isn't your fault, so there's no need to apologize. Michael finally turned back to Bob and Sarah and said,
Hand over some money for making me apologize.
Reluctantly, Bob took $500 in $20 bills from his wallet and handed them to Michael. Michael accepted them with a smug grin.
Thanks, cheating couple.
With those parting words, my nephew Michael walked away. Despite everything, he looked as sharp and tall as he did in the photos. Even if he wasn't academic, he seemed to have plenty of potential for other pursuits. So it was all a lie, wasn't it? My words made them flinch. You really embellished your story. Were you just trying to impress me, to make it seem like you had an outstanding son and a perfect family? They said nothing. When you saw me again, you assumed I must be worse off than you, didn't you? By flaunting your supposed happiness, you thought you could ease whatever bitterness you felt in your own lives.
That's not.
Who would have thought your lies would be exposed so soon after bragging? They both looked uncomfortable. He really is a handsome young man, though. He should try modeling. Embarrassed to be caught by someone they once looked down upon, they kept their heads lowered. Just then, my phone rang. Excuse me, hello, oh, I'm all done here, so I'll head over now. The usual cafe, sure, I'll see you soon. It was Emma. Apparently, she got tired of waiting and ended up ordering an extra slice of cake. Sorry, but Emma's asking me to hurry over, so I'll be on my way.
All right.
As I started walking, I paused and looked back. You know, he really doesn't look like you at all, Bob. A few days after that unexpected reunion, I got a call from an unregistered number. I didn't have it saved, but the number looked familiar. Hello.
Catherine, sorry you had to see that embarrassing scene the other day.
It was Bob, as I had expected. I deleted his number when we divorced. It's fine. So, what's up? Why the call?
Well, you see, it turns out that Michael isn't my son after all.
So, it's finally confirmed. I felt a strange sense of relief, as something I'd suspected for 20 years was now clear.
After that day, I went home and confronted Sarah, asking if Michael was really my son.
Things had taken an interesting turn. And then,
Sarah had a DNA test done when Michael was still a little kid. She knew all along he wasn't mine, but still kept up the lie for 20 years.
I see. So, you're angry.
Yeah, I'm furious. I had to ask her repeatedly before she finally admitted it.
But even if he isn't biologically yours, you've been his father for 20 years. That time wasn't a lie. I wasn't directly involved, but that's how I felt. Bob, however, seemed to disagree.
No way. I already found it shameful that he was unemployed, and now he's not even blood related. There's no love left there.
Is that really how it works? The one I felt truly sorry for was Michael. Knowing he was born out of an affair must have been heartbreaking. But Bob didn't seem to mention him any further.
Anyway, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what I did 20 years ago.
I was surprised by his sudden apology, but the words came to me easily. Yes, it hurt back then, but thanks to that divorce, I met my current husband and was blessed with 2 wonderful children. I couldn't be happier. In fact, I'm grateful.
I see.
Is that all? Well, I need to go. I'm busy today. I ended the call and put my phone deep in my bag.
Hurry up, Mom.
I'm coming. It was the day before Emma's birthday, and the whole family was gathered together. I love the dress.
Does it look good?
It looks amazing. Watching Emma smile in her beautiful dress, I savored the feeling of just how fortunate I truly was.
Prioritize me over your mother. Get to the family gathering now.
His angry voice echoed through the quiet funeral hall. Everyone looked at me in surprise. Please, John, just let me say my final goodbye to my mother.
No, get here now. If you're not here in an hour, I'll divorce you.
Divorce is something I would welcome. However, I didn't want to worry my father, who is already grieving the loss of his wife.
You hear me? 1 hour.
Wait, hold on. The call abruptly ended. As I held my head in frustration, my father spoke up.
What was that?
His body was trembling.
Has he always treated you like this?
Well,
yes. Dad always acts high and mighty towards Mom.
Emma spoke up for me. Hearing this, my father's expression turned from anger to a stony calm.
I see. Then, let's give him what he wants.
He said that coldly. My name is Laura, and I'm a 48-year-old homemaker. Right now, I live with my husband, John, just the 2 of us. I met John back when we were students.
Hey, I like you, Laura. Will you go out with me?
He confessed his feelings to me when we were high school classmates, and that's when we started dating. We continued our relationship through college, and when we became working adults, we decided to get married.
I'll cherish you forever, Laura. So, will you marry me?
John proposed to me like that. Then, at his urging, I decided to become a homemaker instead of getting a job. Fortunately, I love doing housework and don't have any particular hobbies, so I don't spend much money. John always looks satisfied with that.
Laura, you're really the ideal wife.
Just hearing that made me very happy. Soon after, I got pregnant with our daughter, Emma. Both John and I, as well as our parents, were overjoyed.
Mom, let me help.
My daughter, Emma, grew up to be a kind child who would follow me around, trying to help. Gradually, her kindness extended beyond me to others as well. If she saw someone in trouble, she would actively offer help. She had a strong sense of justice too, often confronting bullies head-on and coming home covered in dirt. You were really a tomboy back then.
I kind of remember. Sorry for causing so much trouble.
My proud daughter, Emma, grew up and left home when she got married. Since then, it's just been John and me. One day, while I was cleaning as usual, the intercom rang. Oh my God, here we go again. I checked the monitor and, as expected, it was John's mother, Mary. I sighed as I opened the front door.
How long does it take to open the door? You're really slow.
Mary complained as soon as the door opened and walked in. She marched into the living room, turned on the TV, and asked for coffee. I sighed again at the sight. I've always been troubled by Mary's unannounced visits.
You're still bad at cleaning and doing laundry. You're really a useless daughter-in-law.
And she always complains about my housekeeping. This has been going on for years. Mary dotes on John and sees me, her daughter-in-law, as an enemy. That's why she constantly criticizes me.
Maybe it's because you can only give birth to daughters.
Mary is also not happy that I've only had Emma.
It's really a disgrace not to have a male heir.
Even though there's nothing specific to inherit, Mary uses this to berate me. I suffer from secondary infertility. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't have another child. Mary nags about this constantly. I always listen to her snide remarks in silence. I used to argue back.
Shut up. Just listen to me.
But she'd just yell and throw things at me, so I started keeping quiet. Honestly, I don't want to let her into the house. However, if I don't, she rings the intercom repeatedly and starts shouting. In the end, I feel bad for the neighbors and let her in.
You married into this family. You have to obey us.
Then Mary stays for hours before finally leaving. She's finally gone. I sigh with relief, only to make eye contact with a neighbor through the front door.
Isn't that John's mother? Are you okay?
Oh yes, I'm fine. I'm sorry for the noise.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Kind neighbors sometimes listen to my complaints or visit when Mary is here to help me out. Mary cares about appearances, so she doesn't harass me when others are around.
If you need anything, just let me know. Your granddad helped me a lot.
This house is built on land that belonged to my grandfather, and my father built the house.
If you make a copy of the key without permission, I'll kick you out.
The house is in my father's name, and he made it clear to John that his parents can't have a key. With the support of my neighbors and parents, I managed to maintain some peace of mind. I really wish John would take my side. Mary came over again.
So what?
I wish she'd tell us before she comes, and she always complains about my housekeeping. Can you please tell her to stop? John made a face. Here we go again.
Why? Mom's doing it for you. If you can't get along, It's because you're not trying hard enough. Just get used to it.
John never takes my side. Being doted on by Mary, John has some outdated ideas. He believes that as the husband, he and his family come first, and he shouldn't do any housework or childcare. He has this old-fashioned, male chauvinist mindset.
Anyway, it's all your fault. Don't drag me into your problems.
John doesn't really listen to me. Seeing him storm off to his room, I sighed again.
Hey, Mom. Can I come over sometime?
One day, I got a call from Emma. Of course. The next day, Emma came over. Why did you come over on a weekday? Your dad's not here.
I didn't come to see Dad. I came to see you.
Emma isn't very close to John. On the other hand, John dotes on Emma, but she always seems annoyed by it.
Because it was you who really paid attention to me. Besides, I can't like people who bully my favorite mom.
Emma has always cared about me. So what brings you here today?
Mom, have you thought about divorcing Dad?
I froze at Emma's words. Seeing my reaction, Emma started to speak with a wry smile.
You don't talk about yourself because you don't want to trouble Grandpa and Grandma, right?
That was true. At first, I thought about consulting my parents. However, my mother has a chronic illness and has been in and out of the hospital for years. So I hesitated to bring it up with them.
Now both my husband and I are earning enough, and we can support you. So why don't you get a divorce from Dad and live together?
Her words made me pause and think. Certainly, there was Mary, who enjoyed tormenting me, and her husband, Kevin, who acted like he didn't notice. And then there was John, who never helped me, and whom I had finally stopped loving. I wanted to be free from them. Are you sure? Won't it be a burden for you?
It'll be totally fine. Let's live together.
Emma said with a smile. Her words made me feel relieved. However, I knew I couldn't get a divorce right away. I decided to take my time and prepare for it. But those plans were suddenly disrupted. What? Mom is hospitalized? My mother had to be hospitalized again. This time, it seemed quite serious. Hearing my father's distressed voice, I pleaded with John. I want to go to my parents' house.
What? No way. If you go back home, who's going to do the housework?
But this time it might be really serious.
No. You're my wife now, so cut ties with your family.
John was adamantly against me going back to my parents' house. Since getting married, I could only visit my parents once a year. And that was only because Emma begged to go see my family. As I was wondering what to do, I got a call from Emma.
Grandpa told me about Grandma.
Yes, but...
I get it. Let me talk to Dad.
Emma seemed to understand without me having to say everything. I handed my phone to John without hesitation. John initially looked suspicious, but his expression changed to a smile when he realized it was Emma.
If Emma's asking, I guess I'll allow it.
After talking to Emma for a bit, John reluctantly gave his permission. I quickly packed and got into Emma's car when she came to pick me up, heading to my parents' house for the first time in a while.
Really? Dad makes me so mad.
Emma said that angrily while driving. I smiled wryly, but I couldn't stop worrying about my parents.
Mom, you might not want to think about this now, but you should seriously consider the future.
I nodded at her words. Even though my mother was in danger, John was only thinking about himself. I simply couldn't live with him anymore. I resolved to go through with the divorce. When we rushed to the hospital, my mother was already unconscious, and my father looked completely exhausted by her side.
Oh, Laura and Emma, you came.
Dad.
I knew this day would come eventually.
My gentle father had always been concerned about me. Seeing him so weak, I regretted not coming sooner. I'll stay here for a while. I'll be with you, Dad.
I've taken some time off work. I'll do whatever I can, Grandpa.
Thank you both.
After that, I spent my days taking care of my mom and supporting my dad. Even though I was taking care of her, she was unconscious, so all I could do was talk to her. So what I focused on was supporting my father. Then the inevitable moment came.
When are you coming back?
I got a message from John. Checking my notifications, I saw several messages. Apparently, Mary was doing the housework while I was away.
There's a family gathering coming up, so come back soon.
My mom is critically ill, so I can't go. When I replied, John called me.
Enough of this. Not only are you abandoning your duties as a wife, but now you're refusing to attend the family gathering? This is ridiculous.
I'm not joking. What is this gathering anyway? Apparently, one of his relatives was getting married. They were gathering to celebrate, but it was a relative whose name I didn't even recognize. I couldn't leave my parents to go back for someone like that. I can't. I want to stay with my parents.
No, that's an order.
With that, John hung up immediately. I sighed deeply.
Mom, Grandma.
Emma came rushing in. That day, my mother passed away. Soon after, her funeral was held. Despite her chronic illness, my mother was kind and knowledgeable. She was loved by many, and not only our relatives, but also many others came to pay their respects.
Dad didn't come, did he?
No, he didn't. I had informed John about the funeral. However, he chose not to attend. As the funeral proceeded quietly, my phone rang with a call from John. Normally, I would have stepped outside to take the call, but seeing who it was, I gasped. John had specifically called me. As I was debating what to do, Emma, who was beside me, seemed to have an idea and gave me instructions.
Put it on speaker.
Hearing that, I guessed what Emma had in mind. She likely wanted to expose John's behavior to everyone present. So I deliberately answered the call on speaker in front of everyone. Hey, I'm at a funeral right now.
What are you doing? All the other relatives are gathered here.
John yelled, and I instinctively fell silent. People around me looked curiously, but when I put my finger to my lips to signal for silence, they seemed to understand, and the room fell quiet.
Today is a family gathering. Get here now and help Mom.
Don't be unreasonable. It's my mother's funeral.
Prioritize me over your mother. Get to the family gathering now.
His angry voice echoed through the quiet funeral hall. Everyone looked irritated at John's incredibly selfish remarks. Please, John, just let me say my final goodbye to my mother.
No. Get here now. If you're not here in an hour, I'll divorce you.
Divorce is something I would welcome. However, I didn't want to worry my father, who is already grieving the loss of his wife.
You hear me? 1 hour.
Wait, hold on. The call abruptly ended.
What was that?
As I held my head in frustration, my father spoke up. His body was trembling.
Has he always treated you like this?
Well,
Yes. Dad always acts high and mighty towards Mom.
Emma spoke up for me. Hearing this, my father's expression turned from anger to a stony calm.
I see. Then let's give him what he wants.
He said that coldly. An hour later, still in our funeral attire, my relatives and I arrived at John's family home.
You're late. What?
When I rang the doorbell, Mary appeared with an angry expression. However, seeing everyone gathered behind me, her body stiffened in shock. Ignoring her, we all entered John's family home. As we moved toward the noise, I saw men laughing crudely, likely drinking. Meanwhile, the women, seeing us, stepped aside in silence, their expressions surprised. Sorry to keep you waiting.
You're late. What the?
John turned around at my voice and froze. His expression was just like Mary's. The relatives, who had been lively, were surprised to see us, all dressed in suits.
What's with the outfits? And why is it not just you, Laura?
You told me to come immediately, even though it was during my mother's funeral, so here I am.
Since there was something more important than my wife's funeral, we all decided to come.
We smiled at John, but no one's eyes were smiling. Noticing this, John mumbled and looked away.
Well, that's...
All right then. Would you mind telling us why you called Laura away? What right did you have to take her away from the important moment of saying her final goodbye to her beloved mother?
Though my father was smiling, the pressure he exerted was terrifying.
Well, Laura is my wife, so...
So being a wife means you can do anything to her. Pushing all the housework and childcare onto her, allowing your mother to harass her, and forbidding her from visiting our house. Is that what you think a wife is?
John tried to speak, but my father quickly countered. Eventually, John fell silent.
What do you think my precious Laura is to you?
My father yelled at John. John flinched and froze, letting out a small gasp.
Stop it. You're scaring John.
Mary rushed in. While she glared at my father, he returned her gaze coldly.
It's only natural for a wife to obey her husband's family.
What era do you think you're living in? Human rights are defined by law, and your statement is in direct contradiction to those laws. Are you aware of that?
My father immediately countered Mary's words. Clearly, he was extremely angry about the situation. Seeing my father's rare display of anger made me feel a bit relieved. However, I didn't show it and kept glaring at John.
Besides, if you say that, I can't come home either.
Emma said that as she stood next to my father.
You always tell me to come home once in a while, but you tell Mom she can't visit her parents. What's that about?
That's...
You should have come to Grandma's funeral, Dad. Instead, you're here drinking. I've hated that about you since I was a kid.
John looked shocked at Emma's words. He never imagined that Emma disliked him. Then my relatives started chiming in, calling him insensitive and the worst family. Even about half of John's relatives began to look at his family with disdain.
No way. Emma hates me.
John, pull yourself together.
Though Mary said that, John was already in a panic. Seeing this, we left the house. After sending my mother off peacefully, I returned to the house one more time. I needed to pack my belongings.
Are you sure you want to come with me?
Of course. I decided to divorce John and move back home. And I planned to live quietly with my father.
Laura.
Just as I finished packing, John barged in. Behind him was Mary. It seemed that Kevin was not around. He still avoided these situations, as usual. Perfect timing. Here, sign this. I handed John the completed divorce papers. Seeing them, he turned pale and began to apologize.
I need you, Laura. Please reconsider.
No, I have no love left for you.
Wait, Laura. We'll forgive you for everything. So you should forgive John too.
Something snapped inside me at Mary's words. Who do you think you are to forgive anyone?
What?
I don't need your forgiveness for anything. Mary flinched as I suddenly yelled. Ignoring her, I began to let out everything I had been holding in. Even though I repeatedly told her to call ahead, she always showed up unannounced, and I hated it. Every time she complained about my housekeeping, it made me uncomfortable. Whenever I went to Mary's house, she treated me like a maid and never gave me a break. I directed all my pent-up frustrations at John and Mary. Why on earth should I need your forgiveness?
Well,
If anything, it's you who should be asking for forgiveness. You should be saying, I'm sorry for staying at your house for hours without notice, complaining about everything, and treating you like a maid. Mary fell silent at my words. Well, maybe it was because my father was standing next to me, glaring with a cold smile.
John, I can't leave my precious Laura in your care any longer. Get out of this house.
What?
The house is in my name, so it's you who needs to leave.
John turned pale, perhaps having forgotten this fact.
Get out now.
My father ordered John and Mary out.
Wait. Laura, please reconsider.
Wait a minute. Before you leave, just sign the divorce papers. John looked hopeful when I stopped him, but his expression quickly fell when he heard my next words. Finally accepting it, John signed the divorce papers. I'm so glad the divorce is finalized.
Yes, truly.
As my father and I shared a laugh, we heard commotion outside. We looked out the window to see what was happening.
Why did Dad leave us behind?
It seemed they had come in a car driven by Kevin. Apparently, Kevin left while they were arguing with us. After some more commotion, the police, called by our neighbors, took John and Mary away. They're noisy to the end. Watching this, I muttered. Then, after everything quieted down, I took my belongings and returned to my parents' house. Oh, it's a message from Kevin. When I checked my phone after returning home, there was a message from Kevin.
I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, Laura.
The message contained an apology. Kevin had left early to buy time for the women in John's family to escape. Apparently, some of the women had stayed behind at John's house under the guise of cleaning up. It seems that our arrival woke up the women.
So, they all escaped while Kevin was buying time.
It turned out that Kevin had been marginalized in the household due to Mary's schemes. Everyone had been ignoring him. This time, Kevin had taken his revenge on Mary. I might have misunderstood Kevin.
No, it's true he didn't protect you. So, don't feel sorry for him. Instead, let's be glad we're free of that family.
I nodded in agreement with my father's words. Apparently, John and Mary were in a difficult situation. Since the women had successfully escaped, their husbands were now holding a grudge against John and Mary. And Kevin himself divorced Mary. The two of them were shunned by all the relatives, and Kevin kicked them out of the house, forcing them to move into a cheap apartment. It's going to be tough for them from now on.
What did you do to Dad?
I had taken a significant portion of John's savings through property division and compensation for emotional abuse. Additionally, I had informed his company about his behavior. John would occasionally bring his colleagues to the house. John had old-fashioned views in the worst way. As a result, he would sometimes forcibly bring his subordinates to the house. One of these subordinates had given me their contact information in case I ever needed help, and I enlisted their help this time. As a result, John was in a very uncomfortable position at work. And that's not all.
What else?
It turned out John had been emotionally abusing his subordinates as well. When they learned about our divorce, they came forward with evidence and sued him.
Wow, that's really the worst.
Yes, and he ended up getting fired and had to pay compensation to his subordinates. So, John had no choice but to move into a cheap apartment. Now he's working multiple part-time jobs, barely making ends meet. Mary could work too, but since she's always been a homemaker, she's just living off John's earnings. Because of this, John is under a lot of stress. According to a subordinate who saw him in town, he looked haggard and frustrated, kicked a trash can, and was severely reprimanded by the police.
He really hit rock bottom. I'm so glad we cut ties before this baby was born.
Emma was at my parents' house to announce her pregnancy. Seeing her lovingly pat her belly, I was also glad to have finalized the divorce. Emma's husband was also there, currently keeping my father company.
So, can I have the baby here?
Of course. I'm already looking forward to the birth of my grandchild. Knowing that a great-grandchild is on the way, my father eagerly brought out drinks and started drinking with Emma's husband, though I'll need to stop him soon before he overdoes it. John and Mary, with their selfish actions, won't even get to see their grandchild and great-grandchild respectively, let alone hold it. I think that's the biggest punishment for John, who doted on Emma. By the way, I informed Kevin about Emma's pregnancy.
I don't deserve to meet them. Please focus on taking care of Emma.
Given Kevin's words, I doubt we'll see him.
By the way, Mom, have you thought about marrying again?
Not yet. I just got divorced after all. As I answered Emma, one man came to mind. His name is James. He's the subordinate who gave me his contact information, and he's been contacting me frequently since my divorce.
That look on your face. Do you have someone in mind?
Emma asked with a mischievous smile. She managed to get the whole story out of me.
James, I think I know him.
What?
Sometimes, when I woke up in the middle of the night, he'd apologize and say, "Sorry for waking you up."
Emma looked nostalgic. Apparently, whenever James came over, he was always considerate of Emma, who was just a child at the time. And he always seemed to be watching over me.
I used to wish James was my dad instead.
Really?
I think it's time for you to find your own happiness, Mom.
Her words made me pause and think, and then I nodded. Right after that, James invited me to dinner, and Emma and I shared a laugh. My own happiness, maybe I can find it this time. Thinking that, I couldn't help but smile. A little early, aren't I? A year later, I arrived early for a meeting and wondered how to pass the time.
Laura,
What? I turned around at the voice to see a disheveled John. He stumbled towards me.
it's been really tough since then. I realize now how important you are to me.
I see, I replied coldly, keeping my distance from John.
And I heard that Emma had a baby.
Hearing that, I felt a surge of anger, wondering how the news had leaked. Emma is currently busy taking care of her newborn. I can't let John disrupt her life. So what? It has nothing to do with you.
Yes, it does. If you and I get back together.
That's out of the question.
At that moment, someone put an arm around my shoulder. Looking up, I saw James glaring at John.
You, James? My subordinate?
Not anymore. I'm your former subordinate, and I'm now in a serious relationship with Laura.
John's face fell in despair at James' words. A year ago, when James invited me to dinner, I accepted, and we met. He confessed that he had fallen in love with me at first sight and had been harboring feelings for me ever since. After that, we decided to start dating.
This can't be.
I will make Laura happy this time, and I will cherish Emma's child as my own grandchild. You no longer have a place here.
With Jane's firm declaration, John stumbled away. He would never appear in front of me again.
So, Laura,
Yes,
will you marry me?
James asked, looking a bit shy. I nodded, feeling a bit shy myself. So we're engaged now.
Wow, congratulations.
That's wonderful. It has always been my and my wife's wish for Laura to be happy.
When I reported the news at home, my father and Emma congratulated us. Feeling a bit embarrassed, I thanked them.
Are you going to have a wedding?
No, we're both a bit too old for that. Besides, you can't participate with a baby, and it would be hard on you, Dad. They looked a bit disappointed. I smiled softly at that. Instead, we're planning a trip. We'll be away for a while.
I see. Leave Grandpa to me.
Then, I guess I'll take care of the great-grandchild.
Smiling, I nodded at the two of them. I looked at Emma and my father. Thanks to you both, I'm very happy now. Thank you so much. At my words, the two of them exchanged glances. My father was the first to speak.
On the contrary, it's because of you that your mother and I were happy.
Same here. I'm who I am today because you raised me with so much love.
I expressed my gratitude to them once more. Shortly after, I married James.
It's like a dream having Laura as my wife.
James's expression reminded me of John's when he confessed his love. But James was different. John always looked straight ahead, never at me. In contrast, James looked right into my eyes. Even such small things made me smile. A few years later, my father joined my mother, and now I live peacefully with James. Unlike with John, we talk about everything and respect each other. It's a feeling I cherish deeply.
Is Emma coming today?
Yes, she is. Her child is already 6.
Time flies. I always want to buy her everything when she calls me Grandpa.
I couldn't help but laugh at James's words. I understood the feeling well, because I feel the same way. I think Emma might scold you if you buy too much.
And you're any different?
As we laughed together, we heard cheerful voices from the entrance. Smiling, we headed over.
Mom, Dad, hi.
Emma greeted us with a smile. Moments later, our 6-year-old grandchild jumped into James's arms, making him stagger.
Oh, such a little tomboy.
She takes after you. Emma let out a dissatisfied sound at my words. When I burst out laughing, everyone else did too. I thought to myself that I wanted to protect these smiles forever.
My husband was transferred overseas shortly after we got married. Even though I was expecting a new addition to our family, I was left behind. After 9 months had passed, I felt a sharp pain in my abdomen. I barely managed to call an ambulance, but I lost consciousness right there. When I woke up, I found myself lying on a hospital bed. I could see doctors and nurses bustling around me. However, I didn't feel anyone's presence close by. Eventually, one of the doctors noticed I was awake and quietly came over to talk about my condition.
Please stay calm and listen. To be honest, it's a critical situation. So, we're going to proceed with an emergency C-section. Is that all right?
With no real choice in the matter, I reluctantly agreed. Regardless of my own situation, nothing could happen to the baby inside me. And so, I was taken to the operating room. The next day, my husband, who had returned temporarily, rushed into my hospital room. A new member of our family was beside me.
Emily!
The way he rushed over seemed somewhat exaggerated. Maybe it looked that way because I was already feeling that way about him.
You did great. I got a gift. It's for celebrating our new family member.
When I saw the present he handed me, everything I felt for Tom went cold. The anger, the sadness, and even the love I still had left, everything disappeared. Tom.
What?
I can't do this anymore. Please, let's end it.
Emily, I have never met a woman as hardworking and responsible as you. I always thought you were the most amazing person. So,
Tom was a business partner of the company I work for, and we began dating after he asked me out many times. Now, here we are.
so please, will you marry me?
He proposed to me. We had been dating for a few years at that point. Supporting Tom, who worked at a major company, had never felt like a burden during our relationship. He was someone I wanted to follow. That's how I felt. Yes, I'd love to. I agreed without a moment's hesitation.
Oh, thank goodness. Thank you.
Both of us were busy with work, making it hard to find time together, but we respected each other and never forgot to show appreciation, which made our days happy. It was truly a life you could call smooth sailing. One day, Tom stopped me with a serious look on his face.
I need to talk to you. I want you to stay at home, Emily. It might be just a foolish sense of pride, but I want to make you happy with my own strength.
I was confused as he suddenly asked me that. Becoming a stay-at-home wife would mean abandoning the career I had built, even if only temporarily. I was already perfectly happy with our life as it was. But, if the man I chose said it, maybe respecting his wishes was part of my role too. With that thought, I felt I could do it. All right. I will continue to support you. And so, a completely new chapter of my life began. Sometime after I transitioned to being a stay-at-home wife, Tom came home looking absolutely overjoyed. Seeing him like that, I couldn't help but ask. What's going on? Something good must have happened.
Yeah, it's been decided. I'm getting transferred overseas.
I couldn't accept that news with happiness. After all, I had already been cut off from that path, so of course, I couldn't feel overjoyed. I didn't bear resentment or envy, but I definitely didn't feel like saying congratulations either. No, I didn't want to say it. Still, I told myself, you chose to be a homemaker, even if only once, and somehow managed to squeeze out a congratulations. Tom, whether he knew how I felt or not, hugged me tightly.
Thank you.
That warmth didn't melt everything away, but seeing him so giddy, like a kid with a new toy, made me feel a little affection for him. However, what would happen to me? Our home was newly built, and it wouldn't make sense to leave it, especially when I had no idea how many years it might be. That meant I'd be living alone here, right? This question crossed my mind. What should I do?
Oh, since the house is brand new, could you stay back for me?
So that's how it was going to be. In that case, why did I need to quit my job? Why did I have to give up my career? One frustration after another kept coming up. If I stopped thinking about it now, it would only mean postponing the problem. But would voicing it solve anything? I see. In the end, I had no choice but to face these realities without saying a word. And Tom left for overseas, leaving me behind. A few weeks later, an unexpected truth was revealed. I found out I was pregnant. I was happy, but I also felt a great deal of anxiety about raising a child alone. Regardless of whether I stayed home or not, at this point, the option to continue my career had likely disappeared anyway. In any case, I hurriedly tried to call Tom to tell him the news, but I couldn't get through at all. After all, it was his first time being assigned overseas. He was probably busy and overwhelmed with all the unfamiliar things. Feeling like I was about to be crushed by anxiety, I had no choice but to send a message. His response came the next morning, based on my local time. In his message, he seemed genuinely happy too, but there was no apology for missing my call, nor any mention of coming back to the US for the birth. Once again, a deep anxiety welled up in my chest. Why did I have to be alone at a time like this? The vague unease gradually took on a more specific form, turning into a feeling of loneliness. No matter how much time passed, he never made a single phone call. Our communication remained limited to messages. To make matters worse, as the baby in my belly grew, my physical health also started to deteriorate. Whether it was due to my mental state, I wasn't sure of the cause. Anyway, I felt incredibly lonely. Even after clearly telling him how I felt and asking him to come back, Tom adamantly refused, using work as his reason. I could understand his feelings too. Without work, he couldn't support us, and I knew very well the joy of doing work you're passionate about. On the other hand, leaving behind a pregnant wife who wasn't feeling well, without even making a single phone call, made me feel suspicious. My emotions swung back and forth between these two sides. After a while, despite knowing it wasn't good for my mental health, I decided to check Tom's social media to find out what was going on with him. After all, there was no other way for me to know anything about his current life. When I looked, I found that, despite never connecting with me on the phone and even our messages becoming less frequent, his social media posts were increasing day by day. A conversation I'd had with a friend a few days earlier began to replay in my mind.
You should check it properly, at least once.
Nina, who worked with me at my previous job and had always been a reliable mentor, was now working as Tom's boss, in a strange twist of fate. She had given me some advice. But how?
You might not like the idea of snooping, but the quickest way is to check social media. If he's posting, you'll get a pretty good idea of what kind of life he's living over there.
I definitely wasn't keen on it. But I knew that I couldn't afford to be picky about my feelings at this point. Nina had been right. Not only that, but there were also several photos with a local woman, as if to flaunt it. I became certain Tom no longer cared about me. Fortunately, the family and friends around me were taking great care of me. But it still hurt, regardless. The thought that the person I had decided to entrust my life to might be betraying me was enough to drive me crazy. And the more I thought about it, the worse my physical health got. Everything was a vicious cycle. Regardless of my feelings, the due date was steadily approaching. I wondered if Tom would come back when it was time to give birth. Honestly, I didn't have much hope anymore. Besides, if he had gotten close to someone else over there, I wouldn't be happy in the slightest if he came back. I felt more and more like I was being cornered. My health kept getting worse, with no signs of recovery.
If this continues, we may have to perform an emergency C-section. Please discuss this thoroughly with your family.
All right. I knew the doctor meant nothing by those words, but to me, they pierced my heart deeply. However, I couldn't stay silent any longer. Still, I reached out to Tom first. Maybe, deep down, a part of me was still hoping for something. They said I might need an emergency C-section if this keeps up. I sent the message. I wondered what time it was over there. Next, I sent the same message to Nina. She called me right away. The vibrating phone felt incredibly reassuring. Hello?
Hey, Emily, are you all right?
Not much has changed. I still don't feel well. Oh, by the way, I checked his social media.
Oh, and?
It's bad. I'm pretty sure he's just having fun over there. I told her everything as it was.
Ugh, that's almost definitely a bad sign.
I think so too. I mean, the lack of responses is strange enough.
Yeah, if he really cared, he'd reply right away. Though, I guess the time difference could be part of it.
Right then, I got a notification that I'd received a message. Oh, it's from Tom. I put my phone on speaker, checked the message, and read it aloud for Nina. I'm really sorry. Things are wrapping up here. At the very least, I'm praying that you and the baby will be safe. That's what he said. After I finished reading, I sighed. Almost at the same time, I thought I heard a sigh from the speaker too. Even at this point, he didn't seem to plan on being there for the birth.
Maybe this is the end.
It might be. My shoulders slumped. My trust in Tom was shattered. A few days later, I was struck by a sharp pain in my abdomen while at home. The pain felt like my swollen belly was about to burst. I regretted not returning to my parents' house, but it was too late now. Unable to bear the pain, which made it almost impossible for me to walk, I somehow managed to call an ambulance. If only someone were here with me at a time like this. I couldn't help but think that. When the paramedics arrived a few minutes later, I lost consciousness from the intense pain and relief. When I woke up, I found myself lying on a hospital bed. I could see doctors and nurses moving around busily. But I didn't feel anyone's presence nearby. Of course, this is how it ends up, I thought in my still foggy mind. Eventually, one of the doctors noticed I was awake and quietly came over to explain my condition.
Please stay calm and listen. To be honest, it's a critical situation. So we're going to proceed with an emergency C-section. Is that all right?
It didn't seem like I had any choice, so I reluctantly agreed. No matter what happened to me, nothing must happen to the baby. And so, I was taken to the operating room. When I woke up again, I saw my parents and Nina there. It seemed the hospital had contacted them.
Oh, finally, you're awake. How are you feeling?
How about the baby?
They said the baby was born safely. You can relax now.
Thank goodness.
You did great. You're already a wonderful mom.
No, it's all thanks to the doctors. There was a brief moment of peace. There was no need to worry about anyone. But it truly was just a brief moment.
So, where's Tom? I haven't seen him around.
I had explained the situation to my mother, but I hadn't told my father. At that time, I didn't want to make a big deal out of it myself. But I knew that once my father found out, things wouldn't stay that way. It was obvious he'd be furious and confront Tom. Apparently, my mother thought the same. She apologized first and then explained everything to my father. Just as expected, my father stormed off in anger. He probably went to smoke a cigarette or something. My mother followed him to calm him down. That left just me and Nina in the hospital room.
You're well loved, aren't you?
I think so.
So, any word from Tom?
When she said that, I finally remembered. I asked Nina to get my bag and looked for the phone that should be inside. When I turned on the screen, there was one message.
I finally finished work. I'll be there tomorrow.
Even now, it seemed work was his top priority. There wasn't a single word for me. At this point, I almost found it refreshing.
Honestly.
Nina looked like she wanted to say more, but she just sighed and said nothing. The next day, Tom, who had temporarily returned, rushed into the hospital room. Our new family member was beside me. I hadn't been expecting much from him, but at the beginning, we had talked about naming the baby together, so the baby still didn't have a name.
Emily.
The way he rushed over seemed somewhat exaggerated. Maybe it looked that way because I was already feeling that way about him.
You did great. Oh, I have a gift. I thought it'd be nice to celebrate our new family.
Somehow, his tone seemed mechanical and emotionless. Anyway, the gift he pulled out was related to his new project, which had nothing to do with me or the baby. It was a sign of its success. Just as I thought yesterday, family was clearly secondary to him. Work was always number one. If we weren't married and didn't have a child, it wouldn't be a bad way to live. I'd even want to live like that myself. But the situation was different. When I realized what new family meant to him, all my feelings for Tom vanished. The anger, the sadness, and even the faint love I had left disappeared. Tom.
What?
I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce.
What? I've worked so hard.
Who did you work so hard for? Yourself, right? You never once considered me. I can't take it anymore. And that wasn't all. Plus, you cheated on me, didn't you? You posted all those photos on social media. Did you really think I wouldn't see them? Then Tom offered a shocking excuse.
I was struggling too, being alone overseas. I needed someone to rely on. That's how I managed to stay focused on work.
So what? Just because I was lonely here in the US, I should be okay with you cheating? I was lonely, I was struggling, and I tried to reach out to you so many times. But you rejected me every single time. I continued. And building a house is no excuse to leave me behind. I can't understand anything you've done. Just let's get divorced. After I was discharged from the hospital, I pursued legal action for infidelity and demanded compensation through a lawyer. Ironically, that was when Tom started bombarding me with messages. I couldn't help but think, if only he'd kept in touch this diligently from the start, things might have turned out differently.
Wait, Emily, are you serious?
I told you. If you can't even properly take care of your own wife, how can I trust you with a child too?
So, what did I do wrong?
He didn't understand the essence of the issue. He didn't understand the point I was trying to make. I'm saying this because you did nothing. Did you ever do anything for me? Not even a single phone call.
I was thinking of you and the baby.
It seemed he genuinely believed his actions were right. Otherwise, he wouldn't be saying something like this. In fact, he hadn't apologized even once. As a result, I was able to proceed in a way that was largely favorable to me, including the division of assets after the divorce. Additionally, I gained full custody of our child, leading to an outcome I could mostly be satisfied with. The only thing that still didn't sit right with me was the fact that Tom had betrayed me, although there's no point in regretting it. That was the one thing that still pricked my heart like a small needle. However, Tom also paid a heavy price for what happened this time.
I took care of things on my end. There's no way I'd let him get away with it.
Thank you. I'm sorry for causing you so much trouble.
It's all right. I don't care about some big company project or whatever. My old friends are more important to me. Besides, there are other people who can handle it.
All of Tom's infidelity had been reported to his direct superior, Nina, through me. Nina, disapproving of his behavior, used her authority to remove Tom from that big project, and he no longer needed to return overseas. Still, if you asked whether there was a place for him here in the US, the answer, unfortunately, wasn't so simple. Rumors started circulating around Tom, who had been removed from the major project, and it seemed he was now feeling quite out of place even at work. So, what's Tom doing now?
At the company, there's all sorts of talk. I tried to stop it, but if I get too involved, it could make things worse.
That's for the best. He brought it on himself. From his perspective, those rumors had grown far beyond the truth, but this was something of his own making.
Well, in the end, it looks like he's planning to quit. I guess he can't handle the environment anymore.
At this point, I almost felt a bit sorry for him, but everything was just the consequence of his actions. He lost the job he loved, and even though he never paid much attention to it, he also lost his family. Both professionally and personally, he must be at rock bottom now. It's too late for regrets now. He had plenty of chances.
Emily, please, forgive me.
For a while after that, Tom kept calling me and even showed up at my house, practically begging. But I wasn't the kind of person who would be swayed by that. The time when that would have worked had long passed. I've said this many times already. It's too late. For everything. Besides, I haven't even heard a single apology from you yet. Even setting aside how you abandoned me, trying to justify cheating is just unbelievable.
Okay, I'm sorry. Look, I really mean it.
He finally apologized after I called him out. But even that seemed like nothing more than a performance to me. And I was sure it was. The person I had trusted, even for a moment, to rely on and entrust my life to, now looked so utterly pathetic. Do you really think apologizing after everything is over will make it all right? If you keep following me around, I'm going to call the police. Since then, Tom completely disappeared, and all communication from him ceased. After the chaos settled down, I was finally able to name my newborn son. Thomas Jr. That's his name. Not having a father might cause some inconveniences, worries, or burdens for this child. But I swore firmly that I would protect him no matter what. Fortunately, I have a lot of people around me who are here to support me. My parents, other relatives, and Nina are all among them. My parents absolutely adore Thomas Jr., and they come to my house almost every week to help out in any way they can. Even my father, who was so furious back then, has completely become a doting grandfather, with all his old sternness seemingly gone. As for my mother, she watches over him with the same loving expression she's always had. That aside, Thomas Jr. especially seems to be fond of Nina. Sometimes I think he might even be more attached to her than to my parents.
It makes me so happy to be adored by such a cute kid.
Nina smiled widely. And then, in the next moment, she looked at me seriously, staring right into my eyes.
Hey, why don't we work together again?
Her sudden words made me doubt my ears. Wait, what do you mean all of a sudden?
Well, I'm still planning it, but I'm thinking about starting my own company. So I was wondering if you'd want to work there with me.
It was just like Nina to come up with something like that. She's the kind of person who's always looking for something new. I'm sure she's already built up a decent record at her current job.
Oh, of course, I'm not saying right now. Maybe after Thomas Jr. gets a little older. You know, you'll have to raise him on your own from now on, right? Even though you got some compensation, it won't last forever.
She paused for a moment and then continued.
Besides, don't you feel like you haven't worked enough yet?
She hit the nail on the head. Now that I was free, I wanted to work again eventually.
We've known each other for a long time, and I'll make sure you get a good position. So, what do you think? Not a bad offer, right?
It was indeed an offer I couldn't have wished for more. I answered immediately. I'd love to. I never dreamed I'd get to work with you again.
That's a good answer. I feel better knowing you're on board. Finding someone from scratch is tough, you know.
Nina's serious gaze was replaced by a bright, cheerful smile.
But for now, stay by your son's side. Like I said earlier, this isn't something that'll happen right away. Once we get everything prepared, it'll probably take a few years. By then, Thomas Jr. will have grown a lot.
I feel like I'm always relying on you.
Not at all. We help each other, right?
Then, I'll have to work hard to repay you for all you've done so far.
Oh, I haven't seen you smile like that in a while.
I realized it myself when she said it. I wondered when was the last time I had smiled. This past year had been full of hardships, and I had completely forgotten how to smile.
Well, that's how it is. Looking forward to working with you, Emily.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it too. And so, a few years passed with the help of many people. I decided to sell the new house, which I had no special attachment to, and moved back in with my parents with the money from the sale. My parents were happy to accept my decision. Next year, Thomas Jr. will start elementary school. One day, just as we got back from shopping, the phone rang as if on cue. It was Nina.
Hey, how are you? Are you free right now?
Yes, I'm free. What's up?
We're starting the company.
Oh, you're finally doing it.
Yep. So, I wanted to schedule a meeting with you and thought I'd reach out. When are you available?
I opened my planner for the first time in a while. Seeing the blank pages that would soon be filled made it all feel real, and I felt so happy. I'm available anytime.
All right, then let's do it next Monday. I'll come over to your place, so just relax.
Got it. I'll be waiting. I felt my heart flutter with excitement for the new future that was about to begin. Just thinking about being able to work again thrilled me, and working with Nina felt like a dream.
You look happy, Mom.
Yeah. I'm very happy. Smiling, I patted Thomas Jr.'s head, and he smiled back at me, his face beaming. I promised myself that I would raise Thomas Jr. with my own strength. That evening, I swore that